Right, I'd like to welcome everybody today here to the Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee. Can I introduce our slimline top table here? We have Barbara Renton, the Executive Director of Communities, and Adam Taylor from Committee Services. Can I ask Adam to confirm any apologies received and take roll call of the members in attendance, please?
Thanks, Convener. We've had apologies submitted this afternoon from Councillor McCall and also Councillor Frampton. Both will be substituted by Councillor Massey and Councillor Grant Stewart. I'll just run through the list of who is present with us in the chambers. So we've got Bailey Ahern, Councillor Peter Barrett, Councillor Braun, Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Kigali, Councillor Leishman, Councillor Massey, Councillor McPherson, yourself, Convener, Bailey McLaren, Councillor Smith and Councillor Grant Stewart. We have 3 members who are joining us virtually today, so if I can just ask you to confirm whether you're in the meeting. Bailey Brock.
Present. Present.
Thank you. Councillor Welsh.
Yes, I'm here.
And finally, Councillor James.
Yep, certainly, Adam. Thanks. Good afternoon.
Thank you. That's everybody present, Convener.
Adam, could you also minute? I know that the 2 members, Councillor Sheila McCall and Councillor Michelle Frampton, are both absent from this meeting because of coincides with the meeting of the IJB at the same time as this meeting, and it'd be good to feed that back to the councillors and the Democratic Services staff who make the timetables to try and avoid clashes like that in the future, just so they can take that into account going forward. Can I confirm that councillors who are online who wish to attract my attention and talk in the meeting, do so using the chat function online, and those in the chamber can raise your hands. Do I have any declarations of interest?
Yeah, I have a declaration of interest on paper 8, which is the Justice Update, as the signatory for the report.
Nobody else, so we'll move forward to the minute of the previous meeting. Can we agree the minute of the previous meeting? We move on to item 4 for the Police and Fire Reform Local Scrutiny and Engagement Report. Before we move to the Fire Service Quarterly Report, on behalf of Perth Council and this committee, I'd like to offer our support and best wishes to firefighter Barry Martin and his family, colleagues and the wider Scottish Fire Service. It's an amazing dangerous work that you undertake to protect the public, putting your health and lives at risk when you tackle large fires like those in Edinburgh at the now closed Jenner store. We wish Barry and his fellow injured firefighters a speedy recovery. Can I ask Jason Sharp and Group Commander Serge Kambara to introduce the report, please?
First and foremost, thanks so much for the kind words. That's really appreciated in this challenging time for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. And my sincere thanks to all stakeholders that are supported us, one with the resolution of that incident, but also the ongoing investigation. So thanks very much for that. I'd like to introduce myself to this meeting as the local senior officer for the Tayside area. You will be familiar with Mike Rumgay, who has now changed role, and I'm pleased to introduce Group Commander Serge Kabamba as the new Group Commander, and Serge will be speaking to some of the detail and answering questions to this report later on, if that's okay with you. That's the strategic overview for myself, and as you know, there's been a number of activities that members will be aware of that we've been dealing with, coupled with the wider operating environment that we're responding to, which includes the fiscal challenges and severe weather issues we've had quite recently. Just a reminder, that our current fire and rescue plan was approved in 2020. Just for your awareness, we are in the process of reviewing this with a view of making it more bespoke and current to the Perth and Kinross area specifically. The report that we've provided gives a very detailed breakdown and analysis of all the data collected within the reporting period. We've also included an appendix which gives some information to activities that are going on within the Perth and Kinross area. For us, our 6 priorities remain a focus for the wider SFRS, and within this area, you will be familiar with the performance summary that's provided within the report. I don't propose to talk them all through in detail. Serge will go and pull out some key updates for you, but it's really important to notice some positive trends and reduction within there. For us, we continue to work within the business sector and stakeholders to review premises, commercial premises in particular, and what we've done on the back of the new county hotel is to provide some assurance to the group. We've worked with stakeholders within local authority and the private sector to review any similar premises and with the prevention protection matters, and we have recovered to our pre-pandemic fire safety audit targets, which we're quite pleased to report. We're also encouraged with the improvement within our home fire safety. We're continuing to seek innovative and targeted work with partners to improve the performance within that specific arena. You'll see, disappointingly for us, our road traffic collisions and impacts have increased. You'll also read the detail within the appendix that we've established with partners, a road safety group, to look to improve the performance within that. Finally, from a strategic update, it's one of the last points within the report, and it's preparedness. For one area that we are really keen to focus on within the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is developing our new leaders within the service, and Serge is actually leading on a Pathfinder piece of work within the Perth and Kinross area to develop the new and existing managers within our service with an innovative approach to leadership and management training. We plan to pilot this in the coming months. Assuming you've all had an opportunity to read the report, I'll invite my colleague Serge in to pull any further highlights, narrative, and we'll both answer any questions you may have.
Good afternoon. This Q2 report covers the SFRS performance and activities in support of our local fire and rescue plan for Perth and Kinross. I'll provide some context and detail into some of the highlight indicators that you will have seen within the report itself. If I can take you to page 6, our performance summary. Within our highlight indicator 1, accidental dwelling fires, we are currently showing green within this element. Within Q2, we reported 20 ADFs, which reflected a decrease over the same quarter last year, and also is lower than the 3-year average, so quite positive figures. The damage in the majority of these incidents was classed as medium or low, with no properties receiving significant damage. Of the 20 ADF fires reported during this period, 9 had previously been fitted with smoke detection, 8 of which operated and gave early warning of the fire and alerted occupants. We're currently reporting our second lowest number of fires within ADFs over the last 5 years. HI2, which is accidental dwelling fire fatal casualties. There were no fatal casualties within accidental dwelling fires during Q2, therefore we are shown green. And within HI3, accidental dwelling fire non-fatal casualties, there were also 0 during this quarter. Therefore, we're showing green against that highlight indicator also. Within Perth and Kinross, we continue to work with partners to ensure we positively contribute to reducing the risk within our communities. If we move on to HI4, which is non-domestic building fires, within Q2 there were 8 fires within non-domestic buildings within the Perth and Kinross area, which reflects a decrease again over the same quarter last year and also the previous quarter this year. The 6 incidents of six of the 8 incidents resulted in minor damage again, and 3 suffered from medium heat and smoke damage. However, we are showing green against our annual target for HI4. HI5, which is fatal casualties within non-domestic building fires, there were no fatal casualties within Q2. Therefore, again, we are showing green, and this is also comparative to HI6, which is non-fatal casualties within non-domestic buildings, was also 0. In support of our fire safety enforcement plan, we undertook 60 audits of non-domestic premise within Q2. These are buildings such as care homes, hotels, hospitals, etc. Our fire safety enforcement officers will continue to provide the most appropriate level of support to local business to enable suitable and timely legislative fire safety guidance and enforcement to be undertaken. I can take you on to page 13, which is HI7, road traffic collisions. We attended 26 RTCs within Q2 to assist either in extrication of occupants or to make scenes or vehicles safe. Of the 26 incidents attended, there were 5 that required fire service intervention in the form of extrication. This is below our highlight indicator and annual target. Therefore, we're currently showing orange on that performance indicator. HI8 RTC fatal casualties. Within Q2, there were 2 recorded fatal casualties. Therefore, we're shown red, unfortunately. Our target is 0 for RTC casualties. HI9 non-fatal RTC casualties. There were 13 within Q2. However, this again is below our annual target, where we'd expect to be at this point in time. So again, we're shown green. RTCs typically account for around 3% of all incidents and 15% of special service calls that we attended in this quarter. However, they do account for a high number of casualties each year, which is why we continue through a multi-agency partnership approach to attempt to reduce the risks on our road. Road safety within Perth and Kinross has established a road safety partnership, and we work closely with partners and colleagues in an attempt to reduce this number. HI10, which is unwanted fire alarm signals. Our target annually is 620 incidents. However, during Q2, we mobilised to 171 UFAS incidents. And this was from a total of 365 false alarms that we attended. This is a decrease of approximately 8% in comparison to the same quarter last year. UFAS this quarter accounted for approximately 28% of our operational demand within Perth and Kinross area, so it is a significant impact on our service delivery and one that we work tirelessly to reduce. The property types that we tended to attend for UFAS incidents were education, both secondary and primary schools, nursing homes, care homes, offices, and also hospitals were our most frequent offenders within this performance indicator. Crews continue to investigate every cause and provide education and advice at every UFAS attendance. We anticipate our new UFAS mobilisation policy to roll out within Q3/4, which will significantly reduce the incidents that the service attend. And that was following the UFAS stakeholder consultation. If we move on to HI 11, deliberate primary fires, we're shown green at that within Q2. There were 5 deliberate primary fires reported within this quarter, which is below our average and also lower than previous quarter last year. 3 of these incidents were grassland and woodland, and the others involved vehicles. HI 12, deliberate secondary fires, were currently shown red on HI 12. There were 31 deliberate secondary fires reported during this quarter, which is above the same quarter last year when we reported on 16. And it's also an increase against the 3-year average. The majority of these incidents occurred within Perth City itself, and this was comparative to other areas within the area and across the country, involving mainly woodland and grassland. Again, we continue to work with partners to reduce the number of deliberate fires within the Perth and Kinross area, and we find particular value in a proactive approach around youth engagement, and we endeavour to reduce the number of secondary fires through wider youth engagement and awareness, providing education within local schools and educating around antisocial behaviour. As Area Commander Sharp highlighted earlier with regards our operational preparedness, within Q2 we continue our commitment to ensure operational firefighters are trained and respond effectively to incidents as and when required, including extrication techniques, breathing apparatus, casualty care, water awareness, and also road traffic collisions. We also conduct operational intelligence visits at local risks to ensure we are fully aware of the hazards and risks associated with the various buildings within the Perth and Kinross area. We also maintain home fire safety visits and ensure that all high-risk properties are visited and telephone contact made with medium and low. We're currently within our on-call sector continuing to advertise and campaign for retained firefighters with an attempt to fill some of the vacant posts that are currently within retained and volunteer within the Perthshire area. And if I can just then go on to Appendix 1, just to give you a highlight of some of our community safety engagement programmes. We have continued to work with the community action team and promote water safety and attended Drowning Prevention Day. Kinlochranach and Blairgowrie continue to support local patrols, ensuring that our countryside, etc., are kept in a good condition and visitors educated. Perth Fire Station still remains the site for our local rider refinement training, which is led by Police Scotland, and feedback has been excellent from all involved. And Watches attended the Perthshire Pride that occurred a number of months ago in conjunction with our community action team, just to raise awareness and engage with the local community. Appendix 2, notable incidents and events. We've had a number of incidents throughout the area recently, most significant, however, being a large fire at Shore Recycling that occurred on the 4th of the 9th, involving crews from across Fife, Tayside, and also the wider area. The incident itself was concluded after approximately 24 hours and involved a large quantity of waste and products due for recycling. That is the points that I was able to pick out of the Q2 report. However, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on any element of that.
Thank you very much for that. We'll see if we've got a question online from Ian McPherson.
Thank you, Convener. I was just curious to know, in terms of the headline indicators, in terms of the annual targets, who sets the criteria? What's the criteria that's used to set those targets? And is that part of a national formula, or is that determined divisionally? Thank you.
Thanks for your question. That tends to be formed divisionally, as you put it. The local rescue plans are specific to each LSO area. Therefore, we do have that autonomy. And what we do is we'll utilise historical data and also trends, along with our aspirations from speaking to partners and other colleagues and what we hope to achieve.
Thank you.
Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Convener. With your permission, can I ask a question in 3 parts? There is a natural flow to it and they're very short.
As long as it makes sense, yeah.
Thank you. No promises. Thank you very much for the report. As usual, very, very comprehensive and in-depth, and we really appreciate it. Thank you. The first question is really, can you tell the committee what emotional support is available to firefighters, especially topical at the moment, as what happened at the New County Hotel? And then leading into that, can you answer if it's provided in-house by fire brigade staff or if it's outsourced? And do you have figures on the uptake of the support provided? Thank you.
The support available within the service is managed through our health and wellbeing department. So they are a dedicated team that deal with all matters of health and wellbeing, physical and mental. We do have a number of procedures in place, including our post-incident support policy, which is implemented at all incidents where it's determined that there may be potential for further support being required. On this being activated, it then goes to an external body who will provide that support, get in touch with the colleagues that are identified and signpost and assist in supporting them through any issue that they're currently having. I do not have figures to hand with the take-up of the support. However, everyone that attends an incident where the post-incident support policy is implemented will be put forward to undertake that support. It includes all firefighters and flexi duty officers that attend the incident, and can even be rolled out to control operators who may have taken initial calls. I can attempt to get figures for you if you were looking for that, and get back to you with that at a later date.
Councillor Cook-Alley.
This might be more appropriate for either Barbara or the convener, but I was just looking for confirmation that we're not able to be asking questions about the New County fire.
As things stand, the New County fire is under investigation, and I think that the pre-agenda, when we discussed these matters with both the fire service and the police service, what they intimated to us is that they wouldn't be able to say anything in this committee that they hadn't already said in public and to the media previously.
Can I confirm then whether we'll have an opportunity at a later date to ask some of those questions potentially once that investigation is finished?
Yes. If there's not a public inquiry, that then, I mean, we'll just have to see. But obviously the commanders of both services can give you their comment on that should they wish. Do you have another question at all? Councillor Barrett.
Can you hear me?
I mean, you can stay on.
Right.
I've got a special one.
Echoes from my own side. It's terrible. Page 18 of the report, talking about preparedness, which you touched on in your introduction to the report. I was just wondering if you could explain a bit more in terms of what the reintegration programme for day staff consists of, and how it improves the service's preparedness for incidents.
Absolutely, and thanks for your question. The reintegration programme was something that was brought to fruition during COVID, and historically, mainly crew commanders and watch commanders within functions carrying out specialist roles. Once they moved into those posts, they moved away from the operational side of things. Therefore, they didn't undertake the same training as operational crews do to maintain their core competencies and their currencies, and those involve things like BA, compartment fire behaviour, driving, incident command. During COVID, just because of the significant impact, this was implemented, and what was undertaken was people from these departments and functions were brought in to our training departments, and they were fully upskilled to ensure that they were competent to go into a fire station and also respond operationally. So what it gave us was a significant addition to our current workforce that we were able to utilise to good effect. Because of the outcome and the performance during COVID, this is something that we have continued with and will continue with, just to ensure that all personnel are fully trained to respond to emergency incidents and can be utilised where staffing shortages exist.
Thanks, Convener, that's really helpful.
Bailey McLaren.
Yeah, hello, thank you for that report. My question is related to page 19, the local rider reinforcement motorcycle training programme. I'm just intrigued as to how motorcyclists become aware of this, and the uptake, because clearly in the summer months it's quite a motorcycles, there's many on the roads, so it's interesting to hear the background towards this.
Thanks for your question. The programme itself is advertised through social media, and also it's highlighted by our community action teams that attend a wide range of events. I can't comment on Police Scotland and their advertisement of the programme itself. However, I do know that from the feedback we've had from running it for a period of time now at Perth, that it's been well attended and well received.
Thank you.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener. I've got two questions. Would that be all right? First question is on page 11 of the fire report. They talk about audits on businesses, and I'm just wondering, they talk about enforcement notice issued and enforcement procedure, but what is the legal procedure for enforcement, and how far can you go if a notice is ignored, as well as any other advice?
With regards to enforcement, there's a number of avenues that we can take in legislation that we can utilise. Also, within the service, we have fire safety enforcement officers who are specially trained to undertake these audits, and based on the systems they use and the processes in place, the outcome of the audit will be scored, and from that score, the property will either, a responsible person will either be given advice. If it's more serious infringements, the property and responsible person can be given an action plan to be completed generally within 28 days. And following that, should there be no improvement or refusal to improve, ultimately there can be a prohibition notice served on the building and the responsible person, whereby the building cannot be used until the necessary changes have been put in place.
And thank you for that. And next question. Thank you. The other question is on page 15 of your report regarding unwanted fire alarms. You talk about mobilised to 171 UFAS incidents from a total of 365 false alarms. I just wonder if you could detail what other false alarms are involved.
Absolutely. I don't actually have the detail within this report of the breakdown of them, but we do attend a large amount of false alarm good intents. That is where somebody has activated a call point because they believe there was a fire. There's also malicious activations in a similar manner. We also have, within the UFAS category itself, there are a number of different criteria also. So there's quite a varied amount of incidents that fall under the false alarm category. UFAS are the ones that are due to systems within the likes of hospitals, large buildings, and generally activated due to dust or cooking, etc. So these are the ones we can afford to reduce our response quite significantly to, just because of the building's type. The ones out with that, as you've queried, tend to be either malicious or good intent activations or domestic.
Thank you. Thanks, Convener.
Billy Ham.
Thank you very much. My question is on the HI12, the deliberately secondary fires and the massive increase in that quarter. I'm aware of a lot of them in the city centre, and I'm aware there's one particular area in the city centre where it's favourite for setting these deliberate fires. In fact, I witnessed one, which was one of 3 set on one particular day. And I just wondered, with regards to the education, whether you target the youth for education or whether it's part of just a general go out to the schools and give them education on fire training. But I just wondered, these individuals that I'm aware of come from one particular school. I wonder whether you target it to those schools where you know that the perpetrators come from.
We tend to, where possible, target schools. That's generally our approach nowadays. Is rather than a blanket approach, we will target specific schools where the need arises. Our community action teams and our local authority liaison officer will generally engage with partners and community wardens, and will go into schools within the local area to provide advice and education on the dangers of such incidents.
Thank you.
Councillor Welsh.
Thanks, Convener. I've got 2 questions, but they're both linked around the headline indicators. I'll try and be very brief. First one is H11. You mentioned when you were speaking through the report that 9 of those incidents had smoke detection. That seems like a very low proportion of the overall number of incidents. And I just wondered if you could sort of clarify that, because I'm thinking that most properties should now have sort of smoke or alarm or fire detection. And H14, is it possible to provide further granularity for subsequent reports on an unoccupied occupied split, just to get a feel for incidents of fires in buildings that are essentially are secure but not occupied? Thank you.
Okay, so was that for HI4?
Yes,
that breakdown?
correct. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we use a standardised report that was agreed across the local authority areas. That there may be potential to provide further detail if that was something you were looking for. I don't see that being out of the question. So that's something I could definitely look at if it would be helpful.
Thank you.
And regards the
H11.
H11. HI1, okay. Yeah, no, it's the figures that I have. Have obviously been put into the report, and it was just 9 of the 20. Now, with the smoke detection and the change in the Scottish legislation, we generally now only provide smoke detection to high risk properties, the linked package. Therefore, there may be a number of reasons why there wasn't a higher number that had detection. They may have had it in the past, it may have been removed, it may not have been replaced, etc. However, our focus is currently, just because of the detection we have and the stock and quantity that we focus on, high risk. So it would depend on the remaining properties and what risk category they fell into.
So just to clarify, these are just, you know, in HI1, these are essentially fires in domestic properties. I guess my question was, it's not necessarily that they're hardwired to alert the fire service, but actually, is it that you're coming across quite a lot of properties that actually don't have any sort of smoke or fire detection at all?
The vast amount of properties that we come across do have detection. And, you know, we've been running home fire safety visits for probably not far off a decade now, in excess of that, where we fitted detection to all properties previously. However, as I said, with the change in legislation, the process at the moment is just high risk. However, if we do attend a property that doesn't have detection following the home fire safety visit, if they're deemed that they do require it, they'll either be given advice or it will be fitted at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, convener, and echo what everybody else has said. Great report, thanks. And I feel for you in some respects, because I was particularly looking at H7 and HI8, the RTCs, which to extent are out of your control. It's down to bad driving, full stop. You know, and you guys turn up every time and do a great job. But I've got the Strathtay ward and a huge, all the way through the middle, we've got the A9. I don't suppose you know offhand, I mean, because they're quite high figures, sort of a rough percentage of those RTCs on the A9, please. Thank you.
I don't actually have those figures regarding the A9 specifically. They would be figures that I could get quite easily and feed back to you. However, as you commented, just due to the makeup of the road and the speeds of the road, etc., we do seem to have a significant amount of RTCs within that A9 corridor, and it's something that we do actually prioritise, ensuring that we do have appropriate cover within that area for that very reason.
Thank you, and it's appreciated. Thanks.
Councillor McPherson for your second question.
Thank you, convener. It's just a point of clarification, really. On headline indicator 2, fatal casualties on page 17, you say those that die at or after the fire, but where the fire was not identified as the cause of death, are not included in these figures. Is that saying then that the victim has to have died of something like smoke inhalation or their burns, but if they were to say die of a heart attack, they wouldn't be included on those figures?
Yes, that's essentially correct. Unless they died a short period after the incident, which you could link back to, it generally is through smoke or smoke inhalation or actual flame impingement that would be incorporated within our figures. But there is a period following a fire incident whereby if they're removed to hospital and subsequently pass away, they will be included in our figures, regardless of the actual final cause of death.
Okay, thank you.
I have two more questions. Councillor Leishman for your second question.
Thanks, convener. In light of hearing about firefighters that tackled the Grenfell Tower blaze being diagnosed with terminal cancers due to exposure to toxic contaminants, I'm curious to know what facilities you have for decontamination after jobs, both mobile units on site and at the station.
Okay, thanks for your question. With regards to contaminants, there's a real priority within the service around reducing the contaminants and firefighters' exposure to them. This has been highlighted through university studies in conjunction with the Fire Brigade Union initially, and the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service, in response to that, set up a contaminants group which reviewed incident types, PPE, and also processes and procedures that crews utilise following such incidents. Equipment that we have available, mobile, is on appliances throughout the country in the form of decontamination showers that can be requested depending on the incident type. We also carry wipes on the appliances as well, and there's a process in place where firefighters can self-decontaminate just as a matter of good practice, and also there's a process around how they can disrobe, pack up their contaminated PPE, and again laundering processes on return to station where we utilise higher temperatures, and that's carried out by an external company. Back at station, there's an expectation that crews will shower. Therefore, it's important that our facilities are up to speed, and that's something that we have worked through locally within the Perth and Kinross area to ensure that stations have those facilities, just to try and reduce that risk and mitigate any potential health hazards that crews face out with the actual incident itself. These points that I've touched on, they have probably only been in place for maybe the last 4 or 5 years, and slowly they are improving. There are more procedures coming into fruition. There are more processes, and I don't anticipate it will stop at what we currently do. I think we will continue to develop and ensure best practice is adopted by personnel.
And the last question, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. Looking at the performance summary, and I'm looking at the HI4, and it probably relates to the HI1 as well. I was wondering how many premises where you had to attend where there was alcohol being consumed on the premises.
Again, that's not a figure that's contained within the report. I can get those figures again quite easily. They are reported on cause or motives of fires. So there is a number of criteria within our reporting system, whether that be whether the homeowner was distracted, whether they were under the influence of alcohol, etc. So those factors can be whittled down to get you the figures you're looking for regarding alcohol involvement. If you wish, I can come back to you on that.
And last but not least, Councillor Smith at the very last. Dip of his head at the light.
Thank you very much for the report. By the way, it was very, very good, and I've known a lot of the fireys in the past, and you do a great job. My question would be that I did work in a factory for a period of time there, and we had a mandatory practice session probably once, possibly twice a year, where we had to come out and all the details were taken, etc. Does this apply to all businesses, and do you have to check that this has been done every year? Thank you very much.
With regards to coming out, annually or a couple of times a year, is that a fire drill you're referring to, an evacuation, a full fire drill?
Sorry, yes.
Yes, sorry. At the moment, within the Fire Scotland Act, it's actually down to the premise responsible person to ensure that there's adequate fire safety measures and processes in place. Therefore, it's not something that the fire service monitor or enforce. It is solely down to the responsible person, and that's under legislation. However, we do, for example, as an employer ourselves, we are subject to those same requirements. So we do carry out such drills on fire stations annually just to ensure compliance. However, within external non-domestic premise, it is not something that the fire service enforce. However, we would strongly recommend it, and when our enforcement officers are attending buildings such as those carrying out audits, that is one of the criteria that they will expect to be documented to ensure compliance. However, it's not something that we can enforce in the way that some may think we can.
Thank you. Thank you for answering all those questions, gentlemen. Do any members have any comments on the paper that would like to make? There's nobody indicating in the chamber or online. So can we note this quarterly report then? Thank you very much. Now we can move on to the Perth and Kinross Local Policing Area Quarterly Report. Can I ask Chief Superintendent Phil Davidson and Area Commander Tom Leonard to introduce the report, please?
Thanks, Convener, and good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see you all again. Before introducing our Q2 policing report today, I think, like our fire service colleagues, it is appropriate to take a couple of moments to reference our ongoing local police plan development in similarity to the fire service plan development that's ongoing. So I'll touch on that in just a second, but also to reference the tragic circumstances in relation to the new County Hotel fire. And, I pick up the question that was posed earlier just around about when further questions from members may be able to be asked. Members will be aware that 3 people and a dog unfortunately lost their lives as a consequence of the fire, and that a number of other people were provided treatment for injuries following evacuation and rescue by the fire service. And our thoughts, and I think I speak very much in the part of the fire service with this as well, very much remain with the families and loved ones of those who've died and those that have been affected by the incident. And I can clarify and provide assurance to members that continued support continues to be provided via specially trained family liaison officers to the families involved. Remiss of me to not take the chance to thank the firefighters, police officers, ambulance personnel who responded to the incident, but also to a number of other partners, including Perth and Kinross Council and elected members and our local businesses for the continued support across the community. I suppose getting to the earlier question, that this, as I'm sure members will appreciate, is a really complex investigation that has commenced immediately following the fire. There is really close engagement ongoing between Police Scotland, the Fire Service, the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service in particular, and the local authority who've given really good support in and around about this as the investigation continues. I guess whilst I'm sure that there is natural questions about the investigation, about causation factors, about likely outcomes, unfortunately, the position is that we're unable to comment much at this stage, given that it is a live and very complex ongoing investigation, and it's still very much in its early stages. In terms of the query around about when might questions be able to be asked, I would certainly imagine that both the fire report and the police report for the Q3 period will Q3, Q4 period will reference it appropriately, but the extent to which we will be able to provide comment will very much depend upon the timing and the positioning of investigation and state of that investigation with engagement with the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service in particular. So I just hope that helps just in terms of making clear where the position is in respect of it. In terms of the development of the Perth and Kinross Local Police Plan for 23-26, I just wanted to take a short moment today to highlight that the consultation period in respect of that continues. The Local Police Plan, as members will know, it explains how we deliver policing priorities in Perth and Kinross over a 3-year period, with those activities contributing to the broader Police Scotland organisational objectives, but also supporting the Perth and Kinross Community Plan. developing the 3-year plan offers and will continue to offer the opportunity to work together with partners and communities to best understand the priorities and to adjust or improve we do to keep people safe. And our plan in terms of what's been sent out for consultation has been shaped by a range of views, by data, by assessment, and includes public feedback. And members should be aware in terms of the high levels of activity that our local policing teams have put in over the last wee while, where they've been out and about across the area, engaging with communities over several months to gain feedback through our Your Police survey. And that feedback, that data has informed the draft plan, which you should all hopefully have a copy of. It's been circulated to you as part of the consultation period, which opened on the 3rd of November and runs through until the 12th of February. And I would just take the chance to encourage any feedback to be provided through the online portal or via email that is provided. And I guess for information of members, and I suppose why taking the chance when you can through the consultation period to have a look at it, is that the final version of the local police plan for 2023-26 will be brought back to committee in March for consideration and approval by members. So I just wanted to highlight that in that regard. Moving on to today's report, this covers the Q2 period, 1st of July to the 30th of September. But it does focus on the year-to-date data from the 1st of April to the 30th of September, and that is comparable against the same period in the previous year and the 5-year average. As you know, our report provides update and context against the local police plan, the existing one, and shows the linkages to those national objectives and the Perth and Kinross community plan. Before handing over to Tom Leonard, who will draw out just a couple of the highlights from the report, it's right for me to again advise members that the impact of having come through the pandemic still continues to make year-on-year comparisons challenging due to the varying levels of restrictions in place at different times. So just highlight that, and I would now pass over to Tom just to give you a few of the points from the report, and we'll clearly be happy to take questions after that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Trust you'll all had the opportunity to read our performance report for Q2. As the Chief Superintendent mentioned there, that covers the period from 1st of July to 30th of September 2022. The summary page at the start of our report provides an overview of performance. However, I'll provide some further contextual information, and at the end of that, Chief Superintendent Davison and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have. What I would say is that while we've seen variation in terms of some of the occurrence rates, there's no new or emerging trends identified during this quarter that have already been referenced in previous reports. And on a positive note, the levels of crime that we record in Perth and Kinross are broadly speaking lower than we see in other national averages. To start off with violent crime, we continue to see a welcome reduction in the number of serious assaults, with 4 fewer victims than compared with the same period last year. Our detection rate for serious assaults remains lower than previous years. However, a number of these crimes remain under active investigation, with oversight being provided by our local detective inspector. You'll note that robberies have increased by 70% when compared with the previous year, and while that figure is quite stark, it does relate to a relatively small number of additional crimes. An analysis of these crimes shows that the majority of cases, the victims and offenders are known to each other prior to the offence taking place, and stranger attacks remain rare. Common assaults have seen a slight increase when compared with the previous year. However, this rise may in part be attributable to the easing of some of the social restrictions which Mr Davison referenced in his opening remarks here, which were in place during the same period last year. But we've also seen a rise in detection rates for common assaults, which now sit above both divisional and national averages. Moving on to acquisitive crime, you'll recall in our Q1 update, we remarked on the increase that we'd seen in terms of occurrence rates for acquisitive crime across all crime types, but the most significant one being in relation to domestic dwellings, housebreakings, And during Q2, this was an area of particular focus for our teams locally, both in terms of prevention and also investigation. And while we've continued to see a rise in the occurrence rate in comparison with previous years, that rate of increase has slowed considerably. These domestic housebreakings occurred throughout Perthshire. However, we did see a number of the offences taking place near to major road networks, and we know from experience that these locations provide attractive targets for criminals travelling into Perth and Kinross from out with the area. In order to address this, we continue to share information and intelligence in relation to travelling criminals and cross-border crime on a daily basis through a combination of our intelligence units and local and national acquisitive crime forums. And we actively target known perpetrators in an effort to disrupt offending behaviour and to prevent further offences. At the conclusion of the reporting period, a number of these crimes remained under active investigation, and it's anticipated that our performance in this area will improve as these investigations are brought to a conclusion. You'll also recall in Q1 we discussed a rise in vehicle crime, which included the theft of or theft from vehicles, and in particular a number of crime series in the Perth City area. Enforcement activity that were carried out in relation to these offences and subsequent active management of bail conditions for the offenders who remained at liberty awaiting trial has proven successful, and we've seen a reduction in the number of offences recorded at a time when we've seen marked increases in this type of offence, both in other areas of the division and nationally. Our detection rate for vehicle crime has also increased when compared to the previous year and is now significantly higher than both the divisional and national averages. Moving on to road safety, just in relation to Bailey McLaren's question in relation to rider refinement, and I know that Chief Superintendent Davison has put an update in relation to that in the chat function, but just for information, we did actually run 8 sessions in terms of rider refinement scheme during the Q2 reporting period. The advertising of that is as per Mr Davidson's update and very much focuses on social media. However, we tend to see that the uptake of that scheme very positive and is usually oversubscribed. It has been the subject of an independent evaluation, and we'll hopefully be able to share some detail of that with the committee at some point in the future. Tragically, during Q2, we recorded 2 additional adult fatalities, which brings the total number of fatalities in Perth and Kinross for the year to 3, which mirrors the same period last year. Both of the incidents involving fatalities during Q2 were investigated by a Divisional Roads Policing Unit under the supervision of a qualified senior investigating officer. Serious injuries have reduced, with 4 fewer persons seriously injured as a result of road traffic collisions when compared with the same period last year. And as with Q1, we continue to see a marked reduction in the number of speeding offences, a trend which is replicated across the division. And while that's a positive trend and suggests that some of the engagement and enforcement activity that we've discussed and outlined in the report is having a positive impact on driver behaviour, it's probably still too early to suggest a definitive societal change, and a number of other factors, including increased fuel costs, may have a part to play in this reduction. I'm conscious from correspondence and communication with elected members and members of the community that speeding remains a key concern, and I can provide an assurance that our levels of activity in relation to enforcement remain high. Our Divisional Roads Policing Unit continue to proactively patrol priority routes, and observations of officers is that the majority of road users are abiding by speed limits. Our Divisional Roads Policing Unit also provides support to our local policing colleagues with speed checks in the areas where we've received complaints from residents, and also participate in the multi-agency road safety forum, which was referenced in the fire service update. Given the concerns that we continue to receive in relation to road safety matters from our communities, it would be our intention to invite the inspector from the Roads Policing Unit to a future meeting to provide further information on our activity in this area and to answer any questions the committee may have. Moving on to public protection, in relation to domestic abuse, we've seen a small rise in the number of offences recorded under the Domestic Abuse Scotland Act. Detection rates for these offences is lower than previous years. However, analysis of undetected offences reveals that a number are linked to wider, non-recent investigations, which can be more challenging to investigate and protracted in nature. It's anticipated our performance in this area will improve as these investigations are brought to a conclusion. We've seen a reduction in the level of recorded hate crime, with 2 fewer crimes recorded than during the same period last year. We remain conscious of the fact that these figures only represent those crimes reported to the police, and we continue to work with partners to encourage reporting and develop our response to hate crime. And our report can outline some of our activity in this, including the delivery of training to staff in third-party reporting centres. Analysis of hate crimes recorded indicates that offences are often situational in nature and linked to other criminality, with no evidence of any particular group being targeted. As with many other crime types, the consumption of alcohol or drugs is often a factor in hate crime incidents. In terms of sexual offences, we continue to see an upward trend in occurrence rates, which is broadly reflected in both divisional and national figures. However, incidents of rape and attempted rape remain significantly lower than in previous years. In Q1 update, we reported that the detection rate for rape was below previous years due to the fact that a number of the investigations remained active and many of these were non-recent in nature, and the fact that the investigations of that type can prove to be very protracted and challenging in nature due to the passage of time. And just to provide some context to the committee, the recent analysis reveals that almost a quarter of all sexual offences recorded and nearly 40% of rapes recorded fall into the non-recent category, and that the offence was committed more than 12 months prior to the report being made to police. Ongoing work by our specialist public protection teams, both locally and nationally, has resulted in a number of these investigations being brought to a successful conclusion, and our detection rate for rape now sits significantly higher than both divisional and national averages. Finally, in relation to serious and organised crime, we continue to see an overall reduction in the level of crime recorded for drug possession and supply, a trend which is again replicated across the division. Detection rates have increased, and with the support of our serious and organised crime team, we continue to target those involved in the supply of controlled drugs. Our report contains specific examples of our activity in this area and includes the dismantling of cannabis cultivation, warrant enforcement linked to an ongoing operation which resulted in significant quantities of drugs and cash being seized, and a further cash seizure of £155,000 in an intelligence-led vehicle stop. That's highlights from our Q2 report. I appreciate it's a lengthy report, but hopefully provides some context to some of the data that we've provided. But Mr. Davison and I will now be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, gentlemen. Our first question is from Bailey Ahern.
Thank you very much. My first question is based loosely around the local policing plan and to do with the engagement with the communities. I wrote to the Chief Constable in January last year, and Chief Superintendent Davison replied on his behalf with regards to the number of community police and the decline in the community police numbers. I haven't seen an increase. In fact, certainly the city centre team is suffering because of lack of numbers, and I don't know whether that's replicated across other areas. I wonder, as part of the answer, whether you could comment on the retention of new officers, the long-term retention, whether we're keeping officers. I know of a couple that did come to Tayside and left very quickly, and I don't know whether that's affecting the numbers of the policing we've got, especially in the community side, because it does seem to have effect when you look at numbers in terms of detection rate and the rise in crimes, especially in the local and residential areas.
Getting off a mute there. Thanks, Bailey Ahern. So I'll maybe bring Tom in just for that local perspective in terms of community in just a second, but on the broader side of things, I think all members will certainly be aware of the fairly public positioning around about police resources and some of the challenges on the back of COVID and changes in relation to the pensions position. So that nationally has seen a period of reduced resources for the organisation. So we are working through that as an organisation with increased recruitment intakes on each occasion. The last few intakes of new probationers through Tullyallen have been at 300 at full capacity on each. And as a division, Tayside continues to receive its proportionate allocation in terms of probationer numbers. The position last year when we last engaged Billy Ahern was very much in the midst of the Omicron challenges, and where there was a diversion of community officer resources to support the key and primary concerns around about frontline activity and responding to the needs of public at that earliest juncture. Certainly in terms of our operating model, the focus and return to community policing has very much come back into that place since that point, and as COVID has come back out. So we do have a community policing model that operates across Perth and Kinross, as we do across broader Tayside. We very much see ourselves as a division, as a community based, community focused police service. There are and there continue to be some gaps in terms of resource places, but that is into that broader national position, and what I can advise in that respect is that we continue to see those numbers coming through the recruitment channels, and I think we're expecting to get another 9 probationers in the coming weeks, which will further then strengthen numbers across the teams. In terms of retention, broadly as a divisional area, we do see police officers move out on retirement or move out to take up roles in national divisions for career development purposes or otherwise. But broadly, our transitional movement has been okay. It's been okay in the larger context of things. Tom, I don't know if you want to bring in just anything in terms of that local context or the specific areas of coverage that Billy Ahern's after.
Yeah, I can do. Thank you, boss. Just in relation to the local community policing teams in Perth, it is very much a priority for ourselves, and you'll be aware that we did start to backfill the community policing teams after we had moved them into the response to cover the issues caused by COVID. But in terms of local community policing teams, we do have a number of vacancies at the moment. However, they're very much a priority for ourselves to backfill, and you'll be aware that we've been actively doing that. We had a number of people who did retire last year. However, the recruitment into the community policing teams has continued as a priority, and that includes our school liaison officer. So we recruited into the Perth community team and now have community police officers and school liaison officers in place for that. So it does remain very much a priority area for ourselves, and one that will continue to serve us going forward.
Thank you. Can I ask my second question? Okay.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, convener. I've got a question for Chief Superintendent Davison. In the wake of the David Carrick scandal, how is the vetting of all Police Scotland employees being implemented locally to ensure that anyone unfit to serve is removed from the force in our area and provide public confidence in the force in our area?
Thanks, Councillor, for that. I think the Chief Constable and our executive have come out quite clear on that position in relation to vetting across the country, which is that the recognition that public trust and confidence should rightly be there in the police, and the police are there to respond to the needs of the public. Clearly the case and the circumstances that have been reported from the Met are concerning, and something that as a service we need to ensure that we fully look across our whole service and ensure that we've got measures in place to early identify areas of concern and ensure we've got appropriate protocols and practices in place to support that. So that there has been that commitment to enhanced vetting. Vetting very much takes place as part of the recruitment process. We've got really robust conduct regulations and a substantial professional standards department. There's been a commitment from the Chief Constable and their executive in terms of our service values, and I think those service values are well cited across our communities in terms of integrity, fairness, respect, compliance with human rights. And the Chief Constable has come out and been really clear that we are an anti-racist organisation, and there's new approaches in terms of policing together that is very much looking at ensuring the culture and practice across the organisation is where we would want it to be for the going forward. I think the reality is in the way that policing is that we are reflective of communities, that sometimes there are officers whose standards of service and values are maybe not as high as we would like them to be. And I suppose the assurance for the public is that where occurrences are reported into us, and that is the case, that swift action is taken and matters robustly investigated, and rightly so. And we have the support clearly of the perk additionally to that, the top of policing. Hope that helps.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Convener. I hear entirely what Councillor Barrett is saying and the level of public disquiet and concern in London with Metropolitan Police, and let's hope Chief Constable, the new Chief Constable there, will take very clear and decisive action. But my question is on page 42, and it's a section about complaints, and these figures are for the whole of Tayside. It is for 6 months. I hear what's said about the danger of comparing year on year, although I would have thought the pandemic may not be a key factor here. But if we look at the figures there, they are statistically significant, I think, and it's a fall in complaints of between just under 20% and just under 35%. So I'd like to ask, what is the reason for that? What seems to be very sharp fall, and is that reflected in Perth and Kinross as much in the rest of Tayside? Thanks.
Yeah, so thanks for that. You're right to highlight that there is a variance. I would say that we've had it. Sorry, I can confirm that we've had a look at this because it's clearly an area that's important to us in terms of understanding where variance swings occur. And what we know from the previous years that the pandemic certainly had an impact in the number of contacts that were relayed into the service, and those predominantly around about allegations received more so than complaints received, being service matters such as the time taken for police response, time taken for feedback post instances, or potentially a dissatisfaction with a policing outcome. I think the correlation in terms of a drop perhaps reflects, and this is where we're seeing a difference, the return of capacity in policing to be able to respond, that return of community policing resource that I referenced earlier on, and I suppose less restrictions on ourselves in relation to some of the calls and challenges that we would have had and faced during particularly the pandemic periods. So there is that correlation through the pandemic to a fair portion of the complaint reduction across all of Tayside. In terms of the differences between Perth and Kinross, Dundee and Angus, there are slight differences between the areas, and there's peaks and troughs between quarters, but not of a significance that I would highlight here to members today. But I can look out that separate breakdown for you as a separate off-table thing, if that would help.
Yes, actually, I think it would. Genuinely, these figures I think are statistically significant, but I hear what you're saying, and I think it's something we want to look at going forward. But the trend seems, does look very positive indeed, and that's not being complacent. Thank you.
Councillor, if I maybe come back in on that, you know, it's something we're closely monitor because we need to understand, you know, that is there a lack of confidence, for example, in people reporting a level of complaint? So that would give rise to concern as well. So where you get swings either way, it's really important for us to understand the types of complaints, the why, you know, and certainly the assessment has been around about that change from COVID particularly, and the increased capacity this year, I think, has led to a better position, a more positive position.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, convener. My question is about serious assault on page 7. You say that we have seen a marked improvement in detection rates during Q2, which have risen from 53.8% in Q1 to 72.2% at the end of Q2. I mean, that is quite a significant increase in detection rates. I'm just wondering, has there been any analysis done to sort of give some sort of understanding as to why there's been such a dramatic improvement? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I can probably answer that question. So I think we referenced in the Q1 report just some of the new governance structures that are in place in relation to serious crime, including violent crime in Perth and Kinross, with a new locality CID model, which has seen the return of a detective inspector and some local line management supervisors to Perth and Kinross. So that has had a positive impact in terms of our governance around some of the violent crime inquiries. And over the course of the reporting period, we were able to bring a number of outstanding inquiries to a successful conclusion through a combination of that oversight from CID and joint working between ourselves and some of the specialist units within the division, because some of those serious assaults recorded will be investigated by local policing officers, some will sit with CID, but around a quarter of assaults also fall into the domestic category. So there will be other crimes who are investigated by specialist units within the division, including our domestic abuse investigation unit. So very much a focus and a priority for ourselves in terms of violent crime, which has led to some of the improvement that we've seen in detection rates.
Thank you.
Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, convener. It's an excellent report, very comprehensive. On page 21 in Safer Roads, it makes reference to particularly to a significant number of foreign drivers being involved in road traffic accidents, and potentially, I guess, the impacts of those are straying onto the wrong side of the roads and, you know, head-to-head collisions. With Perth obviously being a real centre for tourism and a major transit route, for example, through the A9, are there opportunities to possibly engage with car hire companies at Edinburgh Airport, for example, to maybe sort of, you know, create some sort of you know, sticker that can be put on the inside of the windscreen as a reminder to drivers? I know some of these types of initiatives have been done in the past in other areas.
Thank you, Councillor Welsh. I'm not aware of any plans in place at the moment for such a scheme, but rightfully recognise, obviously, the main arterial routes that we've got coming through Perth and Kinross, and just how attractive it is as a destination for visitors from abroad. So we covered in our report, I think I mentioned in our update there, that those arterial routes, in particular the A9, have been the subject of increased patrol activity by our Divisional Roads Policing Unit, who are continuing to engage with partners at a local and national level in relation to the road safety on those routes. So if it's an order, I'll take that away to our Divisional Roads Policing and provide some further update to the committee in relation to that. As mentioned in my update at the start, it's probably would be useful for the committee, given some of the concerns that we have around road safety, for the divisional inspectors from our roads policing unit just to attend a future committee meeting where hopefully we can go into a bit more detail around some of that prevention activity and driver education that they carry out.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councillor Kilgally.
Yes, I've got a question on speeding. This is something that I know colleagues of mine as well have been told off the cuff by police officers, but that there's been a reduced intent to enforce 20-mile-an-hour zones. And I was just wondering whether we could have some clarity on whether that is actually a policy or whether that's just being kind of, spoken about by officers just because it's something that's happening, and whether that potentially has any relevance to the, quite large reduction that we're seeing then in speeding crimes listed in the report, because that's quite a dramatic drop.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Kigali. I would suggest that there's no intention by ourselves not to prosecute people who are speeding in 20-mile-an-hour zones. However, our enforcement activity and our resource deployment is very much based on those priority routes which are identified as being particularly high risk. I'm aware from the correspondence that I receive on a regular basis that there are concerns around about speeding in local communities, including in 20-mile-an-hour zones, and we work with our roads policing colleagues and colleagues across the partnership in Perth and Kinross, including via the Road Safety Forum, and do carry out enforcement activity in 20-mile-an-hour zones. But as I say, our priority is very much focused on those routes that present the greatest risk. In terms of 20-mile-an-hour zones, the patrols that we carry in relation to that, our focus is very much on education and working with the council to ensure that the engineering and roads engineering in those areas is designed to prevent people speeding in those areas and to improve road safety, with enforcement being an option that we do still have. But as I say, it's working with communities to try and ensure that those areas are safe areas and that people are abiding by the speed law.
Are you happy with that? Bailey Ahern, our second question.
Yes, thank you. And my question's on drink and drug driving, and I'm trying to understand the detection rates. Surely you detect somebody for drink or drug driving because you breathalyzed them or you've given them a swab, which means they've been caught drink and drug driving. I don't understand the 90%. Where's the 10%? Because you physically got the person there, otherwise you've not detected that they've committed a crime.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. In relation to that, now drinking and drug driving, there are occasions where the samples that are taken can require forensic analysis, and that can lead to a delay in offences being marked as detected, as we have to wait for the results coming back from the forensic laboratory.
Okay, so is that detection rate then reflected in the next quarter when you get the results back, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's correct. As the results come in, then they would be detected, and that can sometimes lead, as we see in the drugs offences as well, to detection rates which are over the 100%, as a crime that's occurred during one reporting period is subsequently detected in the next reporting period.
There would generally always be a lag, Bailey Ahern, and that lag is because it's not just say where drugs are suspected and it's bloods that are taken, but it's where somebody's unable to do a breath sample and bloods are taken for alcohol reasons. So a reasonable proportion of those that are stopped, suspected drink drivers, end up going to bloods. That then ends up needing to go for forensic analysis, which creates that ongoing cycle of pending results from forensics.
Okay, thank you.
I think our last question is from Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Convener. My question is on the sexual crime category. I mean, we know that research shows that sexual offences, including rape, are massively underreported. There's something like only 14.5% of sexual offences are reported. I just wonder, is Police Scotland get any initiatives or are planning anything in any way to try and improve on that statistic? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, you'll be aware underreporting is a concern, as it is along a number of crime types, and we would hope that people have the confidence to come forward and report, and hopefully some of the figures that we've seen in terms of our performance in relation to sexual crime would provide the public with the confidence to come and report crimes to us. We work very closely with partners across Perth and Kinross in the third sector, including domestic abuse advocacy and support groups and groups such as RASAC, but also with work that we do through the Violence Against Women Partnership in Perth and Kinross to try and ensure that people do have the confidence to come forward and report to police. And there's been a number of media campaigns that we've conducted throughout the year and during the recent 16 days of activism as well. In terms of offences that have gone unreported, we referenced in our report the proportion of sexual offences which we would class as non-recent in nature, and I explained that those are offences which are recorded by the police 12 months after the offence has been committed. So that will give you an indication just of the number of offences that do take some time for the people to come forward and report. There are probably a couple of elements to that. On occasion, it is the victim themselves taking time to then come and report incidents to the police. On other occasions, it's through proactive investigation, which is one of our investigative tactics. Where we do receive a report from one victim, we will then research the perpetrator's background to identify other victims and proactively approach them to seek out further complaints, which would provide us with corroboration of the offending behaviour. So there are a combination of factors as to why it may take some time to report offences to police, but hopefully through that activity and our continued prioritisation of sexual offending and investigation of that will provide members of the community with the confidence to report to us in the knowledge that the full support mechanisms are in place through specially trained officers within Police Scotland, but also through the partners that we work closely with in the third sector.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's us for these questions. I have some comments for the People's Councillor Barrett.
Thanks again, Convener. I just wanted to say thank you to Chief Inspector Leonard and Sergeant Lee Stewart for the response that we got with regard to a third-party reporting of hate crime and the rollout of training to other centres and the refresher training that's been done, as well as the greater, closer working with the Council and other partners in terms of coordinating communications initiatives. I just want to say I really appreciate that. And also for the additional information that was provided with regard to stop and search in the report. I'm not entirely sure that we've got to the bottom of the issuing of receipts, but I'm happy to pursue that outside the committee. But credit where credit's due. I think the revised content in the reports is very helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
I was silenced. There we are. Thank you. Convener, if I may, a general comment. I just really want to follow on from what you said at the beginning. And it's really to thank the police and fire service for their ongoing commitment to the communities. We all know the dangers that the police can expect. A simple call can quite easily escalate into a dangerous situation, leaving the officer in harm's way. We are very lucky in this country to have a police force which is routinely does not carry lethal force, and yet they still maintain the Queen's peace, or King's peace as it should be now. But you also highlighted the dangers that the fire service can experience. The fire in Edinburgh proves the point again, and it shows just how easily a fire, no matter how small, can get out of control, act unexpectedly, and obviously put danger to life. So I just really wanted to again thank the police and fire for the service. Thank you.
Councillor Leishman.
Thanks very much, Convener. I'd like to take this opportunity also to thank our emergency services for the response and handling of the incident at the New County Hotel earlier this month. Police Scotland and the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service are absolutely vital for our communities. Officers from both services go to their work to keep us safe and protect us, and do so while dealing with a crisis of resources. I have spoken with some local police officers in Perth and Kinross and have heard about the challenges and pressures they are facing. Many feel that they are struggling to perform their duties as they should and want to. Across Scotland, we have approximately 700 police officers less than we need. In 2022 alone, 1,000 frontline officers left the force, and it is something of a relief to hear from Chief Superintendent Davison today that in Perth and Kinross we aren't feeling the national pain to the same extent. Our police work assiduously throughout our communities in Perth and Kinross and all over the country, but they are overworked and suffering from low morale. Evidence of that is in the comments made by the Deputy General Secretary of the Police Federation when he said, "It's not a nice job to be in at the moment. Officers are deciding to take their pension and look elsewhere. They are saying they have had enough." Our fire service are also dealing with severe constraints. Firefighters do their job under the most intense circumstances, and yet they continue to find themselves getting poorer. They had no pay increase in 2010 or 11, a 1% increase in 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16 and 17. They had a 2% increase in 18, 19 and 20 and a 1.5 increase in 21 and 2% last year in 2022. What an absolute insult to skilled workers who go to their work to keep our communities safe. And reading the comprehensive reports from the service, we are all aware of the difficult and different duties that they perform. As well as local police officers, I've also spoken with and listened to local firefighters. They have told me about jobs that they have been to and the seen and unseen dangers that they face. There are firefighters getting cancer at a young age. They are getting them at a significantly higher rate than the general population, and often they are getting diagnosed at a late stage. It's disgraceful that it has been left to the Fire Brigade Union to commission independent research into filling data gaps about cancers that firefighters get. And the health dangers don't stop at cancer. Other additional health risks for firefighters include coronary heart disease and cirrhosis of the liver. As I touched on earlier, in the last fortnight we were told the shocking news that a dozen firefighters that fought to save people in the Grenfell disaster have been diagnosed with terminal cancers. They are in this position because of exposure to toxic contaminants during that huge rescue effort. And our thoughts are with firefighter Barry Martin and his family and his colleagues who were also injured in responding to the incident at Jenner's department store earlier this week. All emergency services are dedicated people who put their lives on the line for us every day. But unfortunately, these chambers are limited in providing the solutions that they need. All we can do is offer them our sympathy and solidarity for the struggles they continue to face and give our sincere thanks for the invaluable work they do in our communities all over Perth and Kinross.
Thank you. Can we note the quarterly report? What I'd also like to do is remind members of the committee that at our meeting in March, there won't be a quarterly return. What we're going to do is have a focus on road safety. And we may have more specialist senior officers in that area available for you to question on that specific topic. It's always a topic that comes up with many questions at this committee. And the quarter 3, quarter 4 reports will be part of our June meeting thereafter. Okay. I have a request for a 5-minute recess, which I'm happy to have, where people can recharge their water and have a break should they wish. Right, item 5 on our agenda today is the Community Planning Partnership update. Can I ask Lee Haxton from the Community Planning Team Leader to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Convener. Councillors, this is the most recent update on Community Planning Partnership activity and covers the period from the last update to committee in November of last year. The report is split into a number of sections and covers some key discussion points at the Community Planning Partnership Board meeting on the 18th of November, the ongoing work towards submitting a bid to pilot a cash first partnership for Perth and Kinross, and a short update on the 2022-23 Community Investment Fund. The key item in the paper is the Council's response to the Scottish Parliament's Local Government and Communities Committee inquiry into community planning. And the deadline for responding to that was the 13th of January, and therefore the convener approved the submission in advance. The response is provided at Appendix 1. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, convener. We touched, can I ask about the Cash First partnership? We touched on it at the last meeting of this committee in early November, but it's really just to get an update, because we're stating in preparation for a bid to pilot a cash first partnership scheme, a working group has been set up. So could I ask, one, what is the likely timeline? Secondly, if we are successful in our bid, what is the scope of the bid going to be? Would it cover the whole Perth and Kinross, or only specific localities like, let us say, Letham or Cooper Angus or perhaps Crieff? And finally, could I just also ask, because it's on the same subject, is the point of reference for residents with the scheme, that will that be delivered, because it's really important if it's a question of heating or eating, issues of child poverty, that is kept as straightforward as possible. Will that be delivered mainly through housing officers who can then refer to welfare rights or to systems advice? It's just to know an idea of how it might work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Apologies, I'm going to have to let you down a fair bit from what's quite a detailed and lengthy question. Unfortunately, there's been no update at all from Scottish Government yet about the process for bidding for a pilot cash first partnership, and until we receive that, I can't really confirm many, if any, of the details that you're seeking just now. The working group is looking at 2 or 3 key bits that we can try and put in place in order to be in the best possible position to submit the bid based on the information that was provided in the middle of last year. But other than that, there's not really much more I can say on it until we see more from Scottish Government, I'm afraid.
And your hope is that you should get that information reasonably soon?
Try again. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, in preparation for today's meeting, I checked with Scottish Government colleagues earlier this week and was advised that it's probably going to be into the next financial year now before that bidding process opens. So unfortunately, there will be a further delay.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, convener. Just a couple of questions regarding the Community Investment Fund. I'm on paragraph 6.1. Full report will be taken to Finance and Resources Committee on the 1st of February. Do we have to, I presume we have to wait until that's approved before the information awards can be released? We're being chased in our ward, obviously, for I'm sure other wards are, for details of who actually got an award. So do we have to wait until then?
Thank you, Councillor Braun. With regard to your specific ward, the payments for that ward were approved earlier this week and are now in the process of being sent out. So by all means, if you wish to speak to any of the applicants that are in touch with you, then you can do so. The full paperwork for Finance and Resources Committee, I think, will probably go public in the next few days, and that'll have all the details for every ward in it. The remaining wards, wards 6 through to 12, are currently being finalised. It's quite a manual process, but staff are working their way through them as we speak.
Thank you for that. So obviously we've released information, so I'm going to ask a favour if you could email me the list, the final list. That would be helpful for the local press. And the second question is again on the Community Investment Fund. This is in your replies on Appendix A, 1, 2, third paragraph down. it mentions that, if I can quote here, currently the Council Community Investment Fund, which of course was one of the most popular things that the last administration brought forward, provides support to projects which tackle local inequality and improve quality of life. And LAPs also play a key role in assessing and recommending grant applications. Now, I'm just wondering, was that a general comment? Because I have to say, in all the ward panels I sat on, our ward, there was never anybody from LAPs playing any role in the considering the awards. So was that a generalisation, or were we just the exception?
Thanks again, Councillor Bourne. With regard to your specific ward, the ward panels were made up of a number of different volunteers across Perth and Kinross. That varied. In some areas there were a lot of local action partnership members involved, so it is more of a general point. However, we, following agreement from the previous SP&R committee some years ago now, as a matter of course, sense checked each of the recommended funding awards with the local action partnerships to see if they had any feedback they wished to offer, but that feedback was very, very limited, so you probably weren't even aware of it coming in. Thanks.
Thanks very much. We seem to do things differently in Blairgowrie. Thank you.
I think across the piece, the implication of the implementation of these things was done uniquely based on each of the different wards areas, which can be a strength to meet the needs and the dynamics within that specific area compared to ours. I have no further questions in the chat. I will move this report. This report covers a number of key areas of work led or supported by the Community Planning Partnership. We are asked to note the progress as well as the update to the Community Investment Fund for 22-23. The call for views is the first stage in the parliamentary inquiry into community planning. This was discussed at pre-agenda and I was happy to approve the proposed response. The committee is asked to homologate this decision and I am happy to move and we do so. Councillor Welsh, will you second this, please?
Thank you, convener. As a new councillor in Ward 2 Strathmore, I was involved in some of the schemes and projects highlighted, especially the Community Investment Fund, which dispensed money to some excellent projects, which I was part of, sitting on the panel, and it was great to see the potential effect of this money on those projects. Also commend the Warm Spaces initiative. Again, this has been well taken up and is my understanding is providing some great opportunities for people to again manage their own circumstances in a sort of communal and welcoming way. I'm delighted to second the report and add my thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Leishman for comments.
Thanks, convener. And thanks to Lee Haxton for the report and to the Community Planning Partnership for the work being done to reduce and remove social and economic inequalities for people in Perth and Kinross. After commenting on a national topic a few moments ago, I'm going to go the other way and be parochial regarding my ward. I would like to comment on the Love Latham Commission. For fellow committee members who aren't familiar with the Commission, it is a collaboration between the Wellbeing Economy Alliance of Scotland, Perth and Kinross Council and Latham residents. The plan was to bring people together to develop a plan to make Latham the best place it can be for children to grow up in. It aimed to support children, young people, families, the wider community and organisations like Perth and Kinross Council to work together to create and deliver a shared vision of what children and young people need in order to flourish. No one knows more about their communities and residents, and the Commission was a brilliant example of local people sharing their feelings, hopes and aspirations for their area. It was a privilege to be involved with Love Latham, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final report from the staff from the Wellbeing Economy Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, convener. I think just in light of the questions that Councillor Donaldson raised, I just wanted to bring to the attention of the committee some of the work that's ongoing with the Anti-Poverty Commission. at a previous meeting of the Anti-Poverty Commission, it was agreed that frontline police officers would be provided with energy cards. So if they visited a house where they discovered that the house was clearly cold and there's a problem in that, they would be able to, act at the moment of contact to address that, to basically improve the agility and a usefulness of the council and community partners response in those circumstances. There's also work being done with involving the Perth and Kinross business community to utilise the Perth gift card as a cash or cashless initiative, growing the number of businesses that would accept the cards where they could be used for buying food and other essentials, and I think that's just demonstrates the agility and the commitment of the council and its partners to address the cost of living crisis immediately, as opposed to in the next financial year. Thank you.
Thank you. No further comments. Can we note the report? Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda is the Housing Revenue Account Strategy Financial Plan, incorporating the 5-year capital investment programme and rent strategy for 27 to 28, reserve strategy and other housing charges for 23-24. Can I ask Elaine Ritchie, the Senior Service Manager for Housing, to introduce the report, please?
Yeah.
This report sets out the proposed housing revenue account budget for 5 years from 2023-24 to 27-28. It recommends increases to rents for houses and other HRA property service charges and appropriate level of reserves. The proposed budget for the next 5 years of the capital investment programme, totalling 89 million for 23-24 to 27-28, is also detailed. The HRA 30-year business plan has been updated to reflect and confirm the affordability of the proposals. The council owns and manages over 7,900 properties. The housing revenue account meets all day-to-day expenditure relating to housing stock as well as investment through our capital programme. There are a number of factors that influence the rent-centred proposals, both in the short term, such as the ongoing impacts of COVID-19 and increasing costs of materials, and longer term, such as the Housing 2040. The rent proposals this year also take into account pressures in relation to Scottish Government proposals, for example, electrical inspection condition reports, additional staff to enable us to progress essential work to meet climate change targets. As everyone here is acutely aware of, the impacts of COVID have been significant and will be long-lasting. As a service, our staff are continuing to see firsthand the impacts that COVID has had on our tenants, alongside the current impact of the cost of living is having on all household budgets. We remain committed to our priority of maintaining rents that are affordable to our tenants. We have assessed the affordability of our proposals and determined that 87% of people can afford our proposed rents without any assistance with housing costs. We also have one of the lowest local authority rents in Scotland and the lowest social rent in Tayside. Committee is aware that we are required under housing legislation and in line with Scottish Social Housing Charter to consult tenants affected by the proposed increases and have regard to their views when agreeing the proposed rent increase today. This consultation included decisions about affordability and how rental income is spent. Engaging with our tenants remains a key priority in ensuring that all our tenants have the opportunity to have their say in the decision-making process. As you will see from the paper, tenants voted on 3 rent options and received information on the impact and affordability of each. All tenants had an opportunity to influence the important decision and were able to return their preference via post and online. We commissioned the Knowledge Partnership to contact tenants over the phone to complete the survey, and our staff also contacted tenants known to be vulnerable or digitally excluded directly to ensure they had an opportunity to vote. Drop-in sessions were also held across local venues. A total of 2,625 tenants, that's 33% of tenants, which is an increase of 20.5% from last year, responded to the voting survey, with 51% of them voting for options 1 at a 2.2 increase. This rent increase will allow the HRA to continue with the same high level of service that is provided to tenants, whilst meeting the challenges we face in terms of increasing costs to the HRA and meeting Scottish Government proposals. The additional investment will be in the following areas, covering fixed costs such as staff and loan charges, increased costs of materials, increased costs to maintain emergency lighting to communal areas, increased utility costs, contract price increases, electrical inspection condition reports, additional capacity to help us achieve net zero carbon emissions housing stock, fire sprinkler systems, continue funding for our digital, financial and social inclusion, buyback funding of 15 million over 5 years, and an overall capital investment of 89 million over a 5-year period, including 28 million for new build housing. To summarise, the recommended 2.2 increase is in line with the views of our tenants. This will ensure that our rent levels remain affordable to our tenants, particularly given the impact the cost of living is having on household budgets, and will be the 7th lowest in Scotland and continue to compare favourably at a national level.
Thank you very much. Moving to questions now. The first question I have is from Billy Ahern.
Thank you very much. My question's on tackling antisocial behaviour, and in the survey, the residents for most important or important, 68% put it down as being important to them. And I noticed in the options that the option 2 was an additional 40,000. We in the administration put in an additional 40,000 last year. This is another 40,000 on top. And option 3 is another 80,000. Can I ask what the 40 and 80,000 would cover that they're no longer going to get, bearing in mind that the survey, 68% of them said it was important to them or more important to them?
Funding was approved as part of last year's rent setting approach, and that was £40,000, as I've just mentioned there, Bailey Ahern, and that is permanent funding to support antisocial behaviour. The additional monies provided by the HRA have provided an enhanced service for our tenants through a dedicated resource, while still enabling council tenants to have access to the wider team along with other residents of Perth and Kinross. There was additional antisocial behaviour measures, as you've outlined, as part of the options to vote on options 2 and 3, but the preferred option selected by our tenants was option 1. However, alongside the enhanced support through this additional resource that we put in through the £40,000, housing services have also, through this having a dedicated resource, they've implemented the Noise app, the installation of soundproofing on a case-by-case basis. They've used the Think Yes budget to install carpets and underlay, and the housing service through the management team have also helped the Safer Community team to enhance their policies and procedures regarding antisocial behaviour, put enhanced monitoring in place and carried out peer audits and spot checks on particular cases. Providing a further £40,000 for antisocial behaviour will create a pressure on the HRA when there's already substantial support and financial assistance being provided by the HRA to support council tenants regarding antisocial behaviour. And there's also good performance as a result of that. Bearing in mind, it's not just council tenants that access support from the Safer Community teams, but it's a team that is open to all residents within Perth and Kinross.
Thank you.
And at last year's committee, it was an amendment by Councillor Barrett and seconded by myself that changed the finances for. As a reason, I think it's an issue that this committee is always taken very seriously. I think we all get quite a big mail bag from our own tenants when there's antisocial issues within their areas. So our next question is for Councillor Donaldson.
Thanks, convener. I've got 2 questions. Second, I'll leave until others have asked their questions. Can I turn to 7.3? It's on Scottish housing quality standards. Obviously, it's a very marked drop from 80.6% down to 46.8%. I think the reasons are set out there, specifically in particular not being able to gain access to tenants' homes during the pandemic, so on and so forth. Could I just ask, though, for the current year, and we're 2 months away from the end of the current year, what is the position, and also in terms of, do we have a key performance indicator in this area? Is there a specific target in normal circumstances we've got to meet in terms of housing standards?
Yeah, as you have alluded to, 7.3, there was a significant drop, but that was a result of the standard changing in terms of new indicators being put in place, and in particular that related to our electrical inspection certificate report. We've made significant progress over the past year. We're almost at 100% with them, so that will have a massive impact in terms of our percentage. I'll bring Nicola Lennon in to give the actual figures, but we are on track to have a significant improvement. But can I add, it just wasn't just Perth and Kinross, it had a substantial dip with this performance indicator. It was new indicators brought in through the whole of Scotland, and all local authorities had a significant dip because of a change in the indicator. We don't have a key performance indicator relating to that, as we should be trying to get up to about 90%, but there's always variables as a result of that. But this area, to give you some assurance, is heavily scrutinised by the Scottish Housing Regulator, where we have to give quarterly and annual updates. And it's an area that we'll constantly focus on, because this is where our energy efficiency work will be monitored through. So I could bring in Nicola Lennon, she might give the actual figures for us today.
I can only give the smoke detector installation figures. Elaine, June might be able to provide the EICR ones, but yes, the smoke detectors, the report indicates that we have only 1.03% of our stock. That has actually improved over the last few weeks since the document went to pre-agenda, and we're sitting at 0.84% now. So we have a total of 71 properties where we have still to install smoke detectors, and the majority of these are as a result of not gaining access. All of the properties that haven't yet been done have been approached on at least one occasion, and many of these have been approached on 3 occasions and are moving to a forced access.
Okay, thanks.
Very much. Councillor Barrett.
I'll try and remember to switch it off this time, convener. I wanted to ask convener if you would agree to a review of the rent strategy being conducted by the Affordable Housing Member Officer Working Group. I think the circumstances in which we agreed a rent strategy of 2.2% seemed like an awful long time ago, and the world has transformed since inflation was 2%, since public sector loans board rates were comparatively low before galloping construction inflation and borrowing costs, and before staff wage settlements were double the level, or more than double the level of the rent strategy. So I do have concerns as to whether the rent strategy is fit for purpose moving forward, and I think it would be good if we could create that space in the Member Officer Working Group to consider how it can be updated with the guidance of officers and participation of members.
The very short answer to your question is yes. These are conversations that we've had both at pre-agenda and I've had with individual councillors outside of the committee itself to ask about these figures. I think with our EIS targets and the need to improve our properties going forward, that cost is still slightly unknown to us, and that the 2.2 figure going forward may not be what our baseline will be, and that baseline will need to be elevated to meet the demands that we have to improve the housing stock as we need to. Hopefully that as we get evidence from the housing team, as soon as we have that evidence, then yes, I think you're right, the Member of the Working Group could have a look at that figure and find out where that goes. Does it go up 0.5%? Does it go up 1%? Does it go up 2%? I think until we have the detailed information on it, that we'll just have to stay with the 2.2 just now. But I suspect that in the not too distant future we will be reviewing that, and I think Barbara would like to come in as well.
Councillor Barrett and committee, I think that we just need to be mindful of and go back and check. I can't remember what we agreed was the scope. of the Affordable Housing Member Officer Group, and we just need to make sure that the scope covers that kind of discussion. But I'm also picking up that, sort of we do need to have information regarding the housing to 2040 and the energy efficiency requirements to make any change to that 2.2 meaningful, so that we can consult tenants in one go about required changes, and that by 25-26 we'll have retrofit assessments as well, and we need to know what they are to be able to inform the overall business plan. But, sort of, I think it's a point well made. I think that the team will go and have a look at that, but particularly being able to make sure that we can discuss it as necessary at the Affordable Housing MOG, and if necessary, make the changes to the agreed remit for the MOG.
Thanks very much for that, Tom and Barbara. I mean, I think it is essential that elected members participate in that process. So thank you.
Yeah, I think your questions reflected in your experience on this committee and the demands that the HRA has. That's it. Right to be nice. It's nice to be nice. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Convener. My question is regarding on page 95. A house condition survey was commissioned in January 2020, but was delayed due to the COVID-19. The survey has been completed and confirms that our overall housing conditions are good with no major outstanding repair works. That concerns me, as I've just been involved in something recently, a relatively new housing scheme, and it's not up to what I would call the correct standard, and it seems to be costing us a lot of money to put repairs right. I would just want to know whether this has come to anyone's attention, and you're quite happy with the stock at the moment, especially when we talk about the what would say the mouldy conditions that we've got at the moment with the dampness, etc. Thank you.
In terms of that, all our stock has to meet a lettable standard, and we have to meet the Scottish Housing Quality Standards. And I can give you assurance that all our stock does meet the Scottish Housing Quality Standards. In terms of the damp, mould and condensation, just before Christmas I sent a quite detailed briefing to all members regarding the approach that Perth and Kinross Council takes regarding that, and we take that very seriously. But to say that the stock condition survey was a sample survey that we carry out, and it helps inform our capital improvement programme. And in terms of major repairs, that's more like structural. There's no issues. There's improvements that we need to take to our properties, and that's outlined in the report, but there's nothing that will be harmful to our tenants. In terms of the new build that you alluded to, I'm aware of that, and that's not structural or harmful. It's just defects that we need to rectify with the builder as part of the snagging process.
Thank you. Can I ask a second question? The second question would be on page 111, rechargeable repairs. It says here that there's a policy to recover the cost of repairs, claims related to works, recover the cost of work arising from tenants' misuse, etc. When I go across to page 135, it just says cost of repairs invented on the works. Of the works, there's no price or cost or anything like that, and it seems to be costing us quite a lot of money. And I do know of instances where houses have been fully done out, basically wrecked, and it's costing us. So there doesn't seem to be any indication of how much is actually costing in total. Thank you.
We don't have a set cost for rechargeable. It depends on what we are recharging, and we do that through a pragmatic approach through a financial assessment, and we will recharge our tenants where it's appropriate and where we do it, and we do it time on time again. It's whether or not our tenants repay that rechargeable, but it's something that we look at, and it's about a holistic approach that we take to our tenants, and it's about giving them the skills and the support to avoid us getting recharges in the first place. But it is something that we do take very seriously, particularly within our locality teams, and where possible, we try to get the recharges back through the recovery as much as possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Convener. Just looking at in Appendix 1, there's an item for void rent loss. It's 418,000 and rising to 420 over the remaining years. I just wonder, what is the current situation with voids?
June, are you able to answer this question in any way?
Yes, it depends really what you mean by the current situation. In terms of our void performance, our year-to-date performance figure is 40.6 days on average to complete a void property for the whole end-to-end process, including the repairs element. That is against a BMIP target, which is quite a bit above that, which is 29 days. So we're not meeting our BMIP target at the moment. There are a number of factors for that. The number of properties that we are dealing with has increased. The condition the properties are coming back in is increased. The capacity for our own in-house trades and our own external term maintenance contractors is at an absolutely stretched at the moment. So we struggle to get work done within the timescales that we would like it to get done. The whole voice process is very much a cross-service approach. The repairs element is obviously the largest element in the middle in terms of preparing properties for re-let. However, we have very close working arrangements in place with our allocations homelessness section and our housing locality teams, as well as the repairs service. So it's very much a cross-service approach for the whole end-to-end void process. So basically the void rent loss is as a result of the figures not being where we would like them to be at the moment. That is predominantly as a result of increased work as a result of properties coming back in worse condition. And as I say, that's something that we follow up on across the service with our tenants.
Thanks very much. That was precisely everything I wanted. Thank you.
Let's add a wee bit more.
Just to say though, despite the increase in timescales, we're still performing way better than any other local authority. The average days is 51 days, so we're just sitting well below that. So just to give you some reassurance.
Thanks for that. Good news.
Councillor Massey.
Thank you, convener. I'm on page 126, estate-based initiatives. The two, well, I've really got two parts to this question. The £200,000, I assume that's for the whole of Perth and Kinross. And I'd like to know how this is allocated. Is it allocated to like locality offices, or how is it allocated? The first come, first serve, or?
The budget's just separated between 4 localities, and it's not, so they all get a pot of money based on that whole amount for the ABIs, and it's divvied up through the 4 localities, and it's up to the localities to come up with projects based on their locality approach, working with tenants out in the community.
Thank you.
Councillor Leishman.
Thanks, convener. My question relates to energy performance certificates. I would just like to know what percentage of our properties fall into the different EPC bands, and with all properties needing to be band D or lower by 2025 and then band B or A by 2032, how many properties do we plan to upgrade each year?
In terms of percentages, it goes from band A to band G. So for band A, we've got 0.5% of our properties meeting that standard. For a band B, we've got 6%. For a band C, we've got 46%. For a band D, 26.5%. For the band E, 5%, band F, just 1%, and we've got nothing in the band G. So we've got roughly about 500 properties that we need to bring up to the standard out of our 7,923 properties in terms of the standard of APCD or below. We've got a robust plan in place to enable us to bring these properties up to the required standard where we can over the next 2 years. We're just going through our procurement process to appoint a company to undertake our retrofitting assessments on some of our properties. These assessments will enable us to meet the climate change agenda, be on track to meet these targets, and also allow us to review and refocus our capital improvement programme, which will also be closely linked to the point that Councillor Barrett made, linked to our rent strategy going forward.
Much. Councillor Donaldson for your second question.
Thank you, Convener. At the very end of the report, we state the need to reduce the carbon footprint of our homes whilst making sure they remain affordable to heat. Can I just ask what consideration, in particular in our capital programme, we've given to the installation of home energy storage systems, batteries? And it's not just from solar panels, it's also households being able to download electricity energy at off-peak times to use during the day at peak times. And I'm not just talking about something like Tesla Powerwall, well, that's probably the leader in the field, but it's others like Nissan, Panasonic. There's a number of new entrants into the field. It just seems to logically make sense in terms of a capital programme, both for new houses and for existing stock, that we actually do something on this front. Just to see what the response is to that question.
So, Elaine, do we have any information on that at the moment?
So Lennon will be able to give a wee bit. Our team are working on that just now. If
Nicola?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Councillor. Yeah, at this stage we haven't ruled anything out. We have been attending quite a lot of seminars. We're involved in quite a number of pilot projects in regards to energy saving tools that are available and working with the Energy Saving Trust. However, in terms of downloading off-peak electricity and using it at a different time during the day, yes, we are looking at alternatives for that. We have had Sunamp in to speak to us, and we're also in discussions with a company based in Kinross that are trying to get a type of system off the ground that allows electrical energy to be stored in a wet heating system and then to be used at a later time when the electricity is at a more expensive stage. We haven't installed any battery storage at this point in time, but it's certainly in the mix with all of the other technologies that we are looking at when we're looking at our retrofit assessments to see how we can bring these properties up to band B and then to net zero going forward.
Can I just say thank you, and it's encouraging to see that, you know, the whole area is under active consideration. I don't know if it's possibly potentially a subject for a briefing, but it does seem to be, to elected members, it does seem to me that there's the potential here, you know, that we meet our climate change objectives and targets, but it's also benefit for householders in terms of energy bills going forward. But thank you, and that's encouraging.
Thank you.
Barbara would like to also comment.
Councillor Donaldson, I mean, this is obviously of great interest to the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee as well. So Nicola has got a presentation that she has done to the convener and the vice convener of that committee. I think we picked that up with this committee as well. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't think there are any other questions, so I will move the report. This report sets out the proposal for the housing revenue account budget for 5 years from 23-24 to 27-28. It recommends increases to rents on the houses and the HRA property service charges an appropriate level of reserves. The proposed budget for the next 5 years of the capital investment programme totalling 89 million from 23-24 to 27-28 is also detailed. The HRA 30-year business plan has been updated to reflect and confirm the affordability of the proposals. The recommended 2.2% increase detailed in option 1 is in line with the views of our tenants. This will ensure that our rent levels remain affordable to tenants and projected to be 7th lowest in Scotland. Continue to compare favourably with the national level. The measures outlined will support continued and sustained improvements in the delivery of our housing service. More specifically, they will provide investment in our repairs, maintenance and service budgets to meet the current level of demand and ensure that performance standards are met, ensure that our properties have up-to-date electrical inspection condition reports to meet our legal obligations, provide capital to enable us to work towards our climate change targets by reducing the carbon footprint of our homes while making sure they remain affordable to heat, increase our housing stock and support the delivery of our new build commitments and meet the housing need in the area, and continue to invest in the homes through the capital investment programme, ensuring ongoing compliance with the Scottish housing quality standards. The cumulative effect of these measures will support the delivery of the Charter outcomes to meet housing need in the area, provide safe and secure housing and support sustainable tenancies and communities throughout the area. Therefore, I move the report and ask committee to approve the recommendations as outlined in section 2 of the report. Can I ask Councillor Welsh to second the report, please?
Thank you, Councillor. This report again demonstrates the housing team in Perth and Kinross are providing high quality, affordable housing and property services and is actively pushing opportunities to invest to meet increasingly challenging targets. I've been nothing but wholly impressed by how on the ball they are in my own ward, wherever I've had to raise and flag any sort of queries or inquiries to them, and I'm happy to second this report.
Thank you very much. We move to comments on the report, and the first comment I have, and the only comment I have, is an amendment from Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, convener, and I appreciate that there are very fine judgments to be made when it comes to consideration of what rent increase to apply to our tenants' rents. I think when you look at the responses from our tenants, there's a very fine balance between those that supported option 1 of 2.2%, which is the level of the rent strategy, and those that supported more than 2.2%, with 51% for option 1 and 49% for options 2 and 3 together. And that's a difference of only 52 tenants out of 8,000 households, as we've heard. So these are fine calls, fine judgment calls over marginal differences in views expressed by our tenants. I want to go back to the situation which I've raised at this committee previously, and at the HRA budget briefings, that the rent strategy I don't think is any longer fit for purpose. It was designed at a time when there was no or low inflation, when the Bank of England had the ability to achieve its target of 2% inflation, a time when public sector loans borrowing rates were well below the 2.2%, and when staff wage settlements were also comparable, if not less. And none of that holds true anymore. Inflation is running at more than 5 times the Bank of England's target at over 10%. Construction inflation, as has been reported many times to the Council, can be running at anything between 15 and 35%. For materials, we're experiencing labour shortages and costs are rising. Staff wages are rising by 5%, again, more than twice the rent strategy. And as was mentioned earlier, we've got the future impacts of addressing the climate emergency to build in as well. So we need to have a precautionary approach to rent setting, which recognises both the cost of living crisis and the short and medium term sustainability impacts on the 30-year business plan and the HRA, and the impact that has on our staff workload. And to be honest, convener, I don't think that 2% does that adequately. The HRA budget includes a proposal to increase staff slippage to 4%. We can already see the impact of not filling vacant posts in terms of demands on staff covering gaps and vacancies and the things that fall between the cracks. I'm regularly following up with constituents and tenants' concerns which haven't been addressed because of shortages and vacancies. And there's no need for the HRA to operate in exactly the same way as the General Council budget. There's no virtue in running a 4% slippage targets. It's simply something that the rest of the council is forced to do in order to square the budget and the challenges of an ever-tightening financial constraints imposed by central government. Convener, the report states that every option that was presented is considered affordable. So I'd contend that at a time when our homelessness presentations are once again on the rise, when our tenants continue to be beset by the plague of antisocial behaviour, that option 2 presents, that option one presents a better and more sustainable way to proceed than option 2 and provides the flexibility to achieve more council house buybacks to support the rapid rehousing of people and families made homeless. My concern is that option 1 merely stokes up more problems for the future, and reasons for implementing a higher increase than the 2.2% rent strategy are crystal clear. Not to take cognizance of those changes would be a mistake. The responsible approach is to recognise and makes modest but still affordable increase in the rents to reduce the prospect of having to make a bigger rent increase next year and avoid the sawtoothing of rent rises that has characterised the Council's approach to rent setting over the past 5 years. Convener, I propose a 2.9% increase in rents, which is still in line with the feedback from tenants in place of recommendation 4, which means an average weekly increase of £2.14 per week and an average weekly rent of £75.75, and propose a 2.9% rise in recommendation 5 for the lockups, garage sites, dispersed tenancies owned by the HRA and Greyfriars Hostel. Convener, I move.
Do we have a seconder for the amendment?
I'm happy to second.
Thank you very much. Do you want to comment? I have a comment from Barbara.
I think that before committee discussed this, it's important that we sought legal advice a number of years ago in terms of any elected member approach to changing what has been a very long and effective consultation process with our tenants. And that legal advice was that it was important then to remind elected members, and this has not changed, that the recommended rent increase presented to this committee reflects our tenants' views, that councillors must have regard to tenants' views and must be able to demonstrate that they have done this. And I think that what is well demonstrated within the report, given that we've got the highest number of tenants who have responded to our survey than ever before, and that survey has, sort of, while very close, and I accept that, but 51% of our tenants have said that they would prefer option 1. If councillors and committee, propose or agree an alternative increase, then there is the potential that they could be challenged for disregarding tenants' views, and it is very possible that through the Scottish Housing Regulator that we may then have a performance failure as a result of that. And paragraph 5.3 in the report very clearly sets out the legislative approach and the approach as mentioned earlier in terms of the Scottish Housing Regulator as well. The legal advice then told us that councillors would therefore need to fully demonstrate that they have considered tenants' views, and that includes a statement explaining the reasons for the decision, the weight given to the views of the tenants, and why councillors have disregarded those. So unless councillors are able to demonstrate that they have had regard to tenants' views, then you could be open to both legal and the challenge from the housing regulator there as well. Having said that, and on the back of that as well, we've also, hopefully coming out of a rent freeze that was imposed by the Scottish Government. And the reason for that rent freeze was about the cost of living crisis as well. And this has been a regular discussion both at council but also at this committee, particularly through the update to the community planning partnership as well. So, I think at that point, having said that, my advice to committee is not to accept that, but it is clearly committee's decision. But linked to that then, as Councillor Barrett has pointed out, is it possible to have a look at that through the affordable housing MOG? And I've had the opportunity to look at what the affordable housing MOG remit was, and if I can find that. Again, so within that, it was to consider the financial issues arising from the provision of affordable housing in relation to delivery, value for money and affordability to tenants. So I think that does fall within the remit of the affordable housing MOG there as well. So it is that, balance between the legal advice that we've received previously, which still stands, the potential for the Scottish Housing Regulator to then say, actually, sort of this is a performance issue because of the high level of tenant engagement that we've had and their views.
Thank you very much. Do I have any other comments? That's fine. No, then I'll move to a vote at then, Adam.
Sorry, Councillor Barrett, could I just get you to clarify again exactly the wording of your amendment in terms of the numbers?
Yeah, certainly. I was proposing a 2.9% increase in rents in recommendation Roman numeral 4, which means an average weekly increase of £2.14 instead of the 162 per week, and an average weekly rent of 75.75. And then further to propose a 2.9% rise in recommendation Roman numeral 5 or V for all the lockups, garage sites, dispersed tenancies owned by the HRA and Greyfriars Hostel. All other recommendations to remain the same.
Councillor Donaldson, are you requesting a recess at this moment in time? Okay, I'll give a 10-minute recess for some brief discussions then. Thank you. Yeah. Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, convener. It's really for clarity, I suppose. 2.9%. How the rise or the increase there? How is that comparable with the private sector, please? Does anybody have that answer?
Do you know any private sector rent increases averages for Pething and Rosslyn?
So as part of the Scottish Government rent freeze, they've taken off social housing, but what with the private sector, they've put a cap of 3% or up to 6% if the private landlord can demonstrate that they need to do substantial work to the property.
Thanks very much, Louise. Thanks.
I think for clarity as well, it would be helpful, Councillor Barrett and Bailey McLaren, that in terms of your amendment, is that to go with all of the proposals in the amendment, so that when we looked at option 2, it included additional funding to go to everything, or simply just to go into the pot?
Sorry, it was option 2 in its entirety, Barbara.
So we'll go to 10 minutes recess, please. the committee on opportunities for any points of clarity. Do any of the members who are online or obviously aren't able to closely have conversations with us here, do they have any points of clarity they wish officers to highlight for them before we move forward? I can see 3 people shaking their heads.
No, I'm okay.
Thank you. Barbara, you got another point?
The only point I wanted has already been answered, convener, so thanks very much.
Thank you.
The other bit, just for a bit of clarity for committee as well, that my understanding is that while the 4% slippage target is something that is cross-council, that we are filling posts, the difficulty that we have, but we have got a strategy, particularly for our trades team, and making sure that we can recruit as quickly to that as well. But so we are filling posts. The 4% probably just reflects that the issues that we have in recruitment.
Thank you very much. We'll move to the vote now. So Adam, if you could.
Okay, thanks, convener. We'll now just go take a roll call vote in line with section 21 of the council's standing orders. We have a motion proposed by Councillor McEwen, seconded by Councillor Welsh, which is to approve the recommendations in the report. And we have an amendment put forward by Councillor Peter Barrett, seconded by Bailey McLaren, which relates to Roman numerals 4 and 5 of the report, where the rent increase be 2.9% instead of 2.2%, with all other recommendations to remain the same. So when I call your name, if you can just indicate whether you're voting for the motion or the amendment. Bailey Ahern.
Motion.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett. Amendment. Councillor Braun.
Motion.
Bailey Brock.
Motion.
Councillor Donaldson.
Motion.
Councillor James.
Motion.
Councillor Kigali.
Motion.
Councillor Leishman.
Motion.
Councillor Massey.
Motion.
Councillor McPherson.
Motion.
Convener.
Motion.
Bailey McLaren.
Amendment.
Councillor Smith.
Motion.
Councillor Grant Stewart.
Motion.
And Councillor Welsh.
Motion.
Thanks, convener. So we have 13 votes for the motion and 2 votes for the amendment. So the motion will therefore carry.
Thank you very much, committee. Thank you for your time to do that. And I'm sure that through the mock process that the concerns that the amenders had towards the motion will be addressed and taken forward, because I do think they are real concerns, as I said previously during the question sessions. So are we agreed to move the report? So move on to our next paper on the agenda. If I can turn my pages, it's item 7 is an update on the participation in the Gypsy Traveller negotiated stopping project and approval for a transient site at the Visit Gypsy Travellers. Can I have Mark Butterworth, Head of the Environment and Consumer Services, to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, convener. As members of the committee will be aware, Perth and Kinross has been visited by Gypsy Travellers for generations. The travellers, when they arrive, can vary in number, as can their length of stay. Unfortunately, there are currently no designated stopping sites within Perth and Kinross. Therefore, their location is generally unsuitable and can have an impact on the surrounding community. Furthermore, the current situation has a disproportionate impact on council services, which is unsustainable. In an attempt to address these issues, the council joined the Scottish Government's negotiated stopping places pilot back in 2019. However, unfortunately, a site for the pilot could not be identified. Even if that had been the case, negotiated stopping sites are designed to accommodate Gypsy travellers for up to 28 days in any 1 year. But what we are now finding in Perth and Kinross is that gypsy travellers are staying for much longer periods of time in the same location. Therefore, it is felt that the development of a more permanent transient site is much more suitable, as there's no set time limit to the length of stay, and a designated transient site could accommodate a number of small groups of travellers and provide the necessary facilities to meet their needs. The site that is being proposed as part of this report is a site adjacent to a frequently visited location on the Food and Drink Park in North Muirton. And whilst the proposed site is not an ideal location, it is recognised that it presents a much better location than the one which is currently used, which is effectively an unauthorised roadside encampment. Should members support the development of a transient site, it is important to note that we are only effectively seeking in principle support today, as further work needs to be undertaken, including the identification of funding and further discussion and engagement with all local stakeholders. Thank you, Convener. Happy to take any questions. There's also colleagues on the call who will take questions as well.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. Our first question is the councillor here? Or Bailey here, I apologise.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my question is on what's going to happen if we get instances where there's more than, and I'm going to use option 1, 10 caravans turning up. Currently, it's quite a lengthy process to go through, and my concern, especially with option 2 and only having 6, is if we end up with more than 6 caravans on the site, bearing in mind, looking at the historic figures, this is going to be a popular site once the travelling community realises there. If we have an overspill of caravans, they're going to go back to using the original road in front of the buildings, to the side of the buildings, of which Perth and Kinross Council has to pick up the cost of putting in the bins, the tidying up, the toilets, etc., as well as the problems that it affects the local community. So if we agree this site and we do get an overspill, are we going to have an enhanced immediate action in getting rid of them, bearing in mind that we're spending all this money on putting them in place, or are we going to have to go through the same rigmarole we're doing at the moment, where it's at least 4 weeks before we can go through that process to get rid of someone?
Thank you, Bailey, for the question. I think the purpose of proposing the transient site today is to avoid the issues that you're actually talking about, which we have at the moment and we have had for many years. I think it is difficult, obviously, to determine how many travellers we will have in the future, but I think what is clear, it is the popular area and they are staying longer. In terms of the process, I'm sure Kirsty could advise better on the process, but we would obviously encourage and direct the travellers to the transient site, and if there was an overspill, of course we would need to deal with that. In terms of the process and the powers to deal with that, I think Kirsty would probably be better to advise on that.
Yes, certainly. The average number of caravans that we have at the Food and Drink Park, for example, is 8. That's based on our figures over the last 5 years. It's not often that we have caravans over 10, which is the option that we have for option 1 for the proposed transient site. If we were to get overspill, yes, I agree, it's quite possible that they may then wish to stay out with the transient site in the area that they currently do at the moment, and that's where there would need to be some sort of policy development on what action we would take in that scenario.
I understand the current figures, but once we put that site in, if we put that site in, it will be known within the travelling community. There will be good facilities at that site, bearing in mind they don't have any other options at the moment. Therefore, it's going to be quite popular. So the amount of travellers heading for that site is almost certainly going to increase, and we will have the overspill that we could have had on several occasions already. And also bearing in mind that there are 2 or 3 different communities, travelling communities, and where we have seen on the Food and Drink Park is 2 separate encampments because they don't want to be together, and we're going to have to come across that situation depending on who is currently will be resident within the facilities we're trying to build.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Hay. Sorry, I think they are all valid comments and they are all risks in terms of moving forward. But I think what I would say to the committee, that the current situation, I'm sure you would agree, Councillor Hurd, is unsustainable. It's not it's not conducive to the function or the working of the businesses on the food and drink park. It's causing many problems for everyone involved, and I think the development of a transient site is a major step forward. There may still be issues. I'm not suggesting it is a panacea and it would completely go away, but I would say to the committee, it's certainly officers' view that developing a transient site is much more suitable to the needs of the travelling community and also to officers in terms of managing the situation. So as I said, it's not I'm not guaranteeing it would be the answer to all our problems or all the issues, but it would certainly be a major step forward.
I agree. The situation currently is not sustainable, and in my discussions, because obviously I live down the end of the road from it, the discussions I've had with local community council and with local residents is that this is probably the best situation we're going to end up in. So yeah, thank you very much.
Barbara, I'd like to comment on.
Bailey Ahern, my understanding is that having that site gives us greater powers and leverage legally, which would be able to enable us to move people on more quickly.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to get at, was the powers would be increased because we have a site, means we're able to act differently than we currently are. Thank you.
Councillor Cogali.
On page 140, between 4.2 and 4.21, it references at first that there was concerns raised, I assume by the businesses, but then when the consultation was undertaken, it seems like everyone suddenly agrees. I just wanted a bit of reassurance that that was not the case, and that there was discussion and that those concerns were allayed rather than just kind of put to bed and moved on.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Cogali. I think it's clear the current situation. I think if you ask businesses and the community council ward members, the current situation is not sustainable. And I think what we would also say is, if we had a number of various options and a number of different sites available, it wouldn't necessarily be an ideal solution in the sense that it is a food and drink park. It was never designed to accommodate a transient site for gypsy travellers. I think when speaking to the businesses and the various other stakeholders, I think it's accepted that gypsy travellers recognise the site as a historical site and will continue to go there. So I think we could develop 100 sites across Perth and Kinross, but they would be pointless if the travellers wouldn't actually use them. So we're confident that the travellers from the discussions will use this site. And as I said, the businesses and stakeholders, and we all don't see this as the ideal solution, but we see it as a much better solution. I think everybody involved, and I think Councillor Ahern's comments would allay with this. This is a better solution than we've currently got, and I think everybody accepts it's not ideal, but a much improved situation.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Convener. Just on options 2 and 3, the lack of on-site management, I think, is a possible concern. I would have thought somebody there would be there would also protect the interests of the visiting travellers, but also the businesses there and any potential businesses to come. So that's a bit of a concern, I think.
Yeah, I think again that's a valid point, Councillor Braun. I think today is very much for me about seeking the committee's approval to develop the site, and then obviously the management of the site. We would consider the various options. Ideally, we would have someone permanently on the site. Another option maybe we can manage it remotely. I think it may be a bit of trial and error, to be perfectly honest. If we can find the resources and we can put a business case together to have the site managed full time, that's exactly what we would do. But that would be part of the development of the proposal as we move forward. But absolutely take on board your comments.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Convener. This is it's a big undertaking, this, and it's going to be quite a cost. Can you tell me just what contributions that the travellers would pay? Would they pay council tax? Because it's going to cost an awful lot of money, and how are you going to collect the money? Thank you.
I think to be fair, I think that the cost will fall largely on the council. We would be looking for additional funding sources, including the Scottish Government. I'm not particularly, I don't know if colleagues in housing could help us out in terms of the requirements to pay council tax, but I think that predominantly, at the moment, I don't think the Gypsy Travellers pay any contribution towards any of the services that they receive. They certainly don't pay council tax, and I couldn't tell you if that situation would change, but probably not, unless anyone else in the call could advise. But I don't think they would be liable for council tax or make any kind of financial contribution, unless colleagues could tell me otherwise. So largely the costs, certainly the capital costs, would fall on the council, and currently, there's a lot of officer time which is not refunded at all from the travellers themselves. So I don't think that situation would change. It would just be a far more efficient way of managing and meeting the needs of the Gypsy Travellers when they do visit Perth.
Can I?
I think it might be helpful if there's any officer who could give a little bit more information. I think that as a council we have a legal responsibility to support Gypsy Travellers' way of life, and the fact that it means that they travel means that they're probably not eligible to pay council tax. Councillor Smith, but I'm not sure. Elaine can come in at the.
I would agree with that position, Barbara, but however, Kirsty and I have been working with Aberdeen City Council, and they've got various transient sites, and they do levy a small charge to some of their residents. So it's something we could explore, but they are exempt from council tax.
Could I come back in? I would think that most council taxpayers would be quite appalled by this. I think that we all have to contribute to society, and they have to as well. And maybe it's a case for me to go into a caravan and go down the road and pay nothing. Thank you.
As a council, we have an obligation towards the travelling community. We have 2 sites that are within our HRA that pay rent, and we will care for those sites. And this is just a different type of site for travellers to use. As a council, we will always meet our obligations and our responsibilities in these things. Funding, we will, like we have with our own HRA sites, we will seek to see whether there is funding from other sources, from Scottish Government or from wider afield, and we will do our best to fund these things as appropriate as we can. But it's our responsibility as a council to provide these sites so that we'll continue to do that to the best of our ability and with the most minimal impact on our residents and houses and within the businesses in the area as we can. Thank you. I have no further comments. I have no further questions. I will move the report. This report deals with a very important but very challenging issue for Perth and Kinross, and particularly for North Muirton, which is well used historic gypsy travel location in Perth City. The current arrangements are not suitable to meet the gypsy travellers' needs and are a major draw on council resources, as well as a cause of concern for local business. The proposals in this report identify a much needed and much improved solution which will benefit all stakeholders. However, unfortunately at this stage the proposed permanent transit site is unfunded, and a lot of work is still needed to be done to develop the proposal further and to identify the necessary resources to make this happen. I look forward to a future report to this committee which will hopefully provide the detail and the funding behind the scheme. Therefore, I move the report and ask committee to approve the recommendations outlined in section 2.1 of this report. Can Councillor Wells please second the report, please?
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to second the report.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? Do you have an amendment from Councillor Barrett? Just checking I hadn't missed that on the email. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener, and thank you to you and the officers for bringing forward this paper to committee, which I think marks, the biggest advance we've made in terms of improving the lives of Scotland's gypsy travellers in this council for at least 15 years. I think racism against gypsy travellers has been described as the last bastion of acceptable racism in this country, and I would hope that Councillor Frank Smith would reflect on the comment that he made earlier, and by the end of this meeting hopefully withdraw it, because I don't think it's acceptable. Convener, negotiated stopping in this council's participation in the national negotiated stopping pilot was a personal priority and commitment of mine, which stemmed from the failure of previous councils to respond properly to the needs and aspirations of Scotland's gypsy travellers in our area. The council has been considering the provision of a gypsy traveller transit site for around 15 years. There has been extensive and repeated searches and assessments for suitable sites, and for the second time we've assessed the Arran Road site as being the preferred location, and one that was mentioned earlier has historically been used by gypsy travellers shifting through Perth and Kinross long before it was a food and drink park. So this is looking like a once in a generation opportunity to do the right thing by gypsy travellers moving through our area, to provide a safe place for them to stay, with access to clean water supplies and the sorts of services that those of us in houses take for granted, a site where we're able to provide high standards of site management and security. Convener, I'm glad that Perth and Kinross Council will continue to be involved in the pilot and will be able to provide valuable feedback into the national evaluation of negotiated stopping as to why it hasn't worked in our area, and for the reasons that were touched on by Mark Butterworth. Other authorities will hopefully learn from our experience. A great deal of the learning is about treating gypsy travellers with dignity and respect. I want to record my thanks to all the staff that have worked on the negotiated stopping pilot throughout the challenges caused by the COVID pandemic, and on the specific specification and design of the transit site and the engagement process with local businesses. Option one may be the costliest option, although that description jars with me when we're only talking about a difference in cost of £600,000, just 25% more than option two. But option one provides 66% more hard standings. It provides 25% more toilet facilities, 50% more shower facilities, 40% more electrical charging points, and an office to provide facilities for site management and for residents to access a communal space. That seems to me more than justify the additional investment required. And you can guarantee that if these facilities aren't built at the start, then they'll cost a lot more to be added at a later date. And given that it has taken this council 15 years to get to this point, I think it's incumbent upon us to do it, and to do it right first time. My amendment is to agree option one as the council's preferred option for the transit site, Convener.
Bill.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm happy to second the amendment. As is mentioned in Peter's opening statement there for the amendment, I agree with pretty much everything he said there. I think to half build a development, and as it says in option two, that we maybe go back at a later date to do it, and as Councillor Barrett has said there, it's going to cost us a lot more. So I think to put it in, it does state in the papers that when looking at the three options, that option two goes beyond, option one goes beyond the costs and what is required by the Scottish Government. But I think, as we have discussed in there and in my comments earlier, there are times of the year that is more than 10 caravans turn up, and when this site is recognised by the travelling community, it almost certainly will be to capacity, and if not overflowed. So I think we ought to be prudent as a council, and as it's only 600,000 at the moment, as I said, the cost could be increased at a later date to try and bring it back up to that standard. I think we should go ahead with option two, and I'm very happy to second the amendment. Option one, sorry.
Well, I'll need confirmation from Councillor Welsh since he seconded my motion, but I'm happy to accept your amendment as it is and take forward that option 1 be this committee's preferred position on this when it comes back with funding and what we're waiting for. Right.
I'm happy, convener, to accept that. Yep.
Thank you very much. So you So we agree the paper as amended by Councillor Barrett. Thank you.
Convener, I'm going to have to go. I've got a declaration of interest on the paper, so.
So we'll move quickly to paper 8, which is the Justice Update Report. Hazel Robertson, can I ask you to introduce this report, please?
Good afternoon. I appreciate you've heard a lot of detail this afternoon, but I'd like to present the Justice Update Annual Report for 21-22, and it's been brought to committee for noting. The report outlines Perth and Kinross Council's contribution to the Community Justice and Safety Partnership. And further detail regarding the work of the Community Justice and Safety Partnership is outlined in the Local Area Annual Return, which is submitted in September to the Community Justice Scotland and is referenced in Appendix 1 of the report. The Justice Update highlights some of the positive contributions made by Perth and Kinross Council, and it specifically notes the Criminal Justice Social Work Service. This activity includes One Stop Women's Learning Service, who you may be familiar with as OWLS, Evolve, which is the men's equivalent service, the West Bank Project, Diversion from Prosecution, Bail Supervision, Structured Deferred Sentence, the Caledonian System, and Prisoner Release Arrangements, all of which are detailed in the report. As a consequence of COVID pandemic, the reporting period saw an adaptation to ways of working and utilising technology to develop flexible hybrid ways of working. This transition has allowed partner agencies to engage more fully and has ensured improved attendance and participation. I'm joined today by Eleanor Lindsay, who is the Community Justice Quality Improvement Team Leader, and Derek Mortimer, the Public Protection Team Leader, who will be really happy to take any more detailed questions on the report. Thank you.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. Does anybody have any questions on this? You need to write your reports so that there's more questionable detail in them. Maybe that's Elaine's secret.
Maybe this is the answer. We just have to have them all answered in the report.
Yes, it's a comprehensive report, I'm getting told, which is why you have no questions, see? So I will currently move the report. The Justice Update provides an outline of the Perth and Ross Council's contribution to the Community Justice Safety Partnership during the report period of 21-22. You are asked to note the approach being undertaken by Perth and Ross Council teams in respect of the Community Justice Safety Partnership and the content of the 21-22 annual report. Outcome activity return submitted to Community Justice Scotland. I am happy to move the report. Councillor Welsh, you second the report, please.
Again, I'm happy to second this report and recognise the work that's gone into it and some of the exciting work that's been done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments? Comments? Can we note the report then, please? Yes. Paper 9 of the report is the Tayside MAPA Annual Report for 21-22. Again, Hazel Robertson to introduce the report, please.
Yeah, I'll just give a brief introduction, and once again I'll have colleagues here if anyone does have any questions, but I'm very pleased to introduce the Tayside Multi-Agency Public Protection Arrangements Annual Report for 21-22. This report has been prepared through contributions from all statutory partners and provides evidence of the joint MAPA activity and how this work's continued through the challenges presented by COVID pandemic. The revised ways of working required agencies to be flexible about how they have continued to deliver a service to those subject to MAPA while ensuring public safety and the management of risk. Although the collaboration between agencies has been tested through this period, service delivery has continued to adapt and was not diminished in any way. This is apparent in the recovery work from the pandemic and is testament to the strength of the collaborative public protection working arrangements and partnership which exist in Perth and Kinross and right across Tayside. So again, I'm joined by Derek Mortimer, who's Public Protection Team Leader, and by Elaine Mackey, who is our Tayside MAPA Coordinator and who would be happy to take any questions.
Do I have any questions for this report? Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. I had a question with regards to page 11 of the report and the description of the 2 paragraphs describing the emerging issue and challenges with regard to individuals returning to the community when the time they've spent on remand is either very close to or greater than what the sentences they would have been given, and therefore they were released very within days or immediately from court. Second paragraph goes on to describe the measures that have been taken, and I just wanted to ask if that has satisfactorily addressed the challenges that were presented, or if there's still an issue.
Hazel?
I think Elaine is probably best placed to comment on this.
Elaine?
Yeah, the difficulty is when someone has been on remand and we get very little time for preparation for the release, we will hastily pull together MAPA meetings. It is still occurring. We're still having some offenders who are being on remand for long periods of time. As the courts are now getting back to full business, we are seeing it improving. But we will hold very fast MAPA meetings when someone's released to prepare for their release back into our communities.
Any other questions? I will move the report. The Tayside MAPA annual report provides details of the management of the offenders across Tayside for the period of 21-22, including those with Perth and Kinross address. You're asked to note and endorse the annual report, and I'm happy to move to do so. You get a second, Councillor Welsh?
Again, this is an excellent report. It's an area that when it's working well, nobody really notices it or asks any questions. But when it's not working, it is a major problem for all communities. So I'm more than happy to second the good work that's been done here.
And do we have any comments? And Councillor James, you can come in and comment here on either of the papers, should you wish.
It wouldn't send before, Convener. I had seen it in the chat, but it just wouldn't send. So, but
I
thank
feel your
you
pain.
anyway.
I can see your house from my back door. So,
thanks.
Right, thank you, Hazel and Elaine. Thank you very much for your reports and for being here on the committee all day, listening to the very end. Thank you very much. The work that you do is wholly important. You know, I'm a pharmacist in NHS Tayside, and discharging patients from hospital is sometimes just as complex at the moment as it is prisoners being released from prison, so that happens appropriately and happens properly, so they have the housing, the social support that they need, so that they stay on the straight and narrow. So again, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your reports. Thank you. I'd be happy to move the reports. Councillor Smith.
Yes, thank you very much, Convener. Maybe a little bit of an experience here, but I would like to withdraw my remarks that I made towards the end of that last subject. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your saying so. Thank you. That brings us to the end of our business on the agenda. Can I thank everyone for your attendance today and your contributions. Thank you very much.